No, you did not misread the title. I watched and ranked every single episode of Breaking Bad. This is a project I've been working on for the past 6 months, and for your convenience, I've packaged them all into one ginormous video. If the length of this video makes you shiver your timbers though, I have all of the videos uploaded separately onto the channel. They're pretty much the same in this video, just with all the editing mistakes fixed, and the video re-rendered so that it doesn't look like a disgusting blurry mess. A quick warning though, the quality of the videos, figurative and literal, will be changing a lot, be it mic quality, jokes, etc. The one thing I've learned from monthly uploads is that consistency is for suckers. And yes, before anyone asks, I will be covering Better Call Saul next. The season 1 video should be coming out sometime next month. In the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed the remastered supercut of my Breaking Bad tier list series. Make sure to fuck that like button and smash the sub with notifications and all that stupid stuff. I really don't care. You do you. Season 1, Episode 1. Pilot. I still remember being absolutely floored by this episode the first time I saw it. Like, I heard this was a good show, but man, I was not expecting it to be that good. Like, it starts off with a pair of pants flying in the air, followed by crashing the RV to Walt freaking out and having a near panic attack to him going out in the middle of the road with only a green button up and tighty whities pointing a gun at what he assumes to be the police, and then intro. And that's the first 4 minutes! So basically, Walter White has turned 50 years old and is going through a midlife crisis. He works as a chemistry teacher and gets paid so little that he has to work at a car wash just to make ends meet. And he still doesn't make enough money. To make matters worse, he's diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer and is given 2 years to live. Oh no! But after finding out about the wonderful world of meth distribution, Walt teams up with former chemistry student Jesse Pinkman to make meth. But things take a zany turn once Jesse talks to Emilio in Crazy 8. After the debacle, Walt thinks it's all over and is ready to go down with a fight. But it turns out that it's just a bunch of firefighters ready to fight some fire. Walt goes home to play Battleship with Skylar and bam, that's the episode. While it wasn't as amazing as I remember it being, the episode is still really good, and it's surprising considering it's the pilot episode. Pilot episodes have a shocking amount of pressure on them. It not only has to introduce the cast of characters, their motives, and their personalities, and demonstrate what the show is even about in the first place, but it also has to be good. Good enough so that audiences will want to come back for more. A lot of pilots are either okay and or are so different from the original show that they feel like a different show altogether, but it's almost like this show cheated. It feels like it knew exactly what it wanted to be from the get-go, aside from a few differences here and there. Like, the show has a lot more comedic moments than it does in the later seasons, and a lot of the characters feel slightly different from what their future selves would turn out to be. Like, Marie is still an annoying bitch, but she feels a lot more toned down and less energetic. Also, it's amazing how sympathetic Walt is in this episode. I actually felt bad for him in this episode and was rooting for him. Which, if you've watched this entire show, is a very odd feeling to have. Overall, I give this episode an A tier. An amazing start to the season and the series as a whole. Season 1, Episode 2. Cats in the Bag. This episode takes place right where we left off, with Walt and Skylar finishing off their game of Battleship. It was so intense that Walt spent the night on the bathroom floor butt-ass naked. The rest of this episode shows the aftermath of the previous episode, with one guy dead and another guy not so dead. Walt is tasked with killing Crazy 8, but can't bring himself to do it. Meanwhile, Jesse is tasked to look for materials to dissolve the bodies with, but can't bring himself to do it. Also, Skylar is getting mad suspect with Walt, so she confronts him at the hospital. He tells her a half-truth, saying that he's blazing it up with his home dog, Jesse, and tells her to
climb down out of my ass.
Skylar is reasonably distraught and eventually tracks down Jesse's address. This episode is great, and for my first slightly controversial opinion of the video, I think it's slightly better than the pilot episode. Overall, this episode is also getting an A tier. Season 1, Episode 3, And the Bags in the River. Walt and Jesse are cleaning up the consequences of last night's Campbell's Chunky Tomato Soup fight, while Walt has flashbacks of his past, detailing the origins of Gray Matter, a company that we'll be learning about in just a few episodes to come. Skylar asks Marie about what a stoner character would act like for a supposed short story she's writing, but Marie takes that as her implying that she thinks Walt Jr. is doing weed, when in reality Walt is doing weed, but in reality Walt isn't blazing the weeds, but is instead blazing up the weeds in the Albuquerque desert. You understand what I'm saying? Well, it's fine if you don't, because there's something I don't understand either. Why of all people would Skylar ask this sort of question to Marie? I mean, like, she's known Marie for years. She had to have known that asking her this type of "I'm just asking for a friend" question is going to make Marie spread the rumor like wildfire. Which she does, causing Marie to call Hank to give Walt Jr. a talking to. Which he does. Meanwhile, Walt finds out that Jesse told Crazy 8 everything about him, and they have a reasonable discussion about the matter.
You didn't follow my instructions!
Oh, well, Heil Hitler, bitch!
Ending with Jesse leaving to the motel, leaving Walt to kill Crazy 8. Walt tries to find any other reason not to kill him, but his mind is in a rock and a hard place. He's about to deliver some food when... After this, he gets some food and a beer for Crazy 8 and actually has a really nice talk with him. When I first watched this episode, I thought this scene was kind of pointless and boring. But I was a fucking idiot back then because I had no idea what was about to happen. Walt decides he's going to let him free, throws away the food, and realizes something. He opens back up the trash can, grabs the broken plate, and... Oh my god! Yeah, it doesn't go well for Crazy 8, making him Walter White's first of many, many murders. This episode was way more amazing than I remember it being. I love the fight between Walt and Jesse, the scene with Walt talking to Crazy 8, the scene with Walt no longer being able to talk to Crazy 8. You know what? I'm gonna do it. This episode gets the honor of being the first S tier on our list. Wow, 3 great episodes in a row. Let's see if it continues. Season 1, Episode 4. Cancer. This episode was a lot better than I remember it being. The episode begins with Hank giving a meeting about the disappearances of Crazy 8 and Emilio, along with the meth they found in the previous episode, which is 99.1% pure. Later, Walter White commits one of the worst crimes he's committed in the entire series. Burning a full rack of chicken. Walt recalls the day he and Skylar met, and Skylar breaks down crying, causing Walt to admit to the family that he has cancer. Man. After a family meeting, Walt and Skylar haggle about chemo and how one of the best doctors in the country will be working on Walt. But while Walt is having a hard time with money, Jesse is having a hard time with not letting the meth demons kick in. He has a panic attack thinking a biker gang is gonna beat him up, but in reality it turns out to be something even worse. Evangelists. Jesse runs to his family's house, where it's revealed that his brother's academically talented, and we get a bit of backstory about Jesse's relationship with his family. It doesn't turn out well though, as the cleaning maid finds one of Jesse's jubilant joints, and kicks him out of the house. On the flip side of things though, it turns out the meth is starting to sell like hotcakes, and Jesse meets up with Walt at his house to give him his share.
Get the hell off my property.
What? I'm just saying.
And don't come back.
This goes well. Walt is starting to lose hope in the cancer treatments due to the financial burden he fears it'll leave on his family, and Walt Jr. gives him some encouraging advice.
Then why don't you just fucking die already? Just give up and die.
Then Walt blows up a car. Executive producer Vince Gilligan. This episode is honestly really good. Not as good as the previous episodes, but a nice one nonetheless. We get some backstory about Jesse, we begin Hank's ultimate quest to find the evil meth dealer of Albuquerque, and we get the big reveal about Walt's cancer. Also, Walt blows up a car. A few slow scenes here and there, but some great scenes as well, like Walt blowing up a car. Solid episode. I'm giving it a B tier, teetering on an A tier. Season 1, Episode 5, Gray Matter. Walt and Skylar attend a birthday party held by Elliot and Gretchen, who both currently run a company named Gray Matter. It's revealed that Elliot and Walt initially founded the company together, but Walt left for reasons we'll get into later. Walt has a talk with Elliot, and while Walt talks about his sick KD ratio in Valorant, Elliot offers Walt a job at the company and even offers to pay for his treatments. Walt rejects his offer, realizing Skylar had told Elliot about his cancer, and that he sees it as some sort of insult because of how much more successful Elliot became despite Walt co-founding the company. Meanwhile, Jesse tries to find a job with no luck and meets his friend Badger along the way. Oh yeah, this episode introduces Badger, one of Jesse's closest friends. He also happens to be the best character in the entire show! Yeah! Oh my god! Badger! Oh my god! Anyways, Jesse decides to partner up with Badger and they cook some dope-ass meth together. But Jesse believes the meth to not be dope nor ass, which enrages Badger. They both end up having a big fight, and Jesse leaves Badger in the middle of nowhere. During this, Walt has a family meeting, and it goes about as well as you'd think it'd go.
You're a pussy.
Walt makes an empowering speech about not wanting to spend the rest of his life miserable, but after sleeping on it, decides to go forward with the treatment. Later, he gets a call from Gretchen, and Walt lies saying that his insurance is covering his treatments, despite the offers he's gotten from them. We also get some pretty vague backstory on Walt and Gretchen's past, and Walt asks Jesse if he wants to cook again. This episode's alright, not the strongest, but not terrible either. Obvious high point is that Badger is introduced to the show, and the intervention scene is also really good. This one's a solid B tier, bordering on a C tier. Season 1, Episode 6. Crazy Handful of Nothin. Walt and Jesse come to a deal on their meth operation. Walt cooks while Jesse looks for people to sell it to. Walt also asks Jesse for no more bloodshed, a statement that Walt will follow for the rest of the series. Walt also begins his long trail of lies to Skylar, stating that he already received a check from Gretchen and Elliot. There's also a significant amount of Walt puking in this episode, but luckily my man Hugo comes in clutch, cleaning the stalls for Walt and even giving him some gum. Hugo's a real one. Later in the episode, Jesse finds out Walt has cancer, noticing the burn on Walt's chest. He finishes the batch and sells it on the streets, making $2,600 total. Realizing this is nowhere near enough money to pay for his treatment, Walt gets angry at Jesse. What's he supposed to do, take a check from some incredibly wealthy colleagues? That's for pussies! Walt tells Jesse to find a distributor, and Jesse decides to make a deal with Tuco, which goes horribly wrong, nearly killing him in the process. Meanwhile, Hank finds out that the mask his group found in their investigation of the evil meth dealer of Albuquerque is property of Walt's high school, which he promptly investigates. He finds a bunch of missing inventory in Walt's lab and warns him of a potential meth man running about the school. Hank arrests Hugo on suspicion of stealing the equipment after running a background check and finding weed in his car. Obviously he didn't, but he's still taken to prison anyways. Rest in peace, Hugo. You were only in one episode, but damn it, you left a hole in my heart that can never be filled. Later, Walt arranges a meeting with Tuco himself, going under the pseudonym Heisenberg, and asks for $50,000. Tuco initially laughs at him, asking why Walt would bring in another pound of meth for him even after what happened to Jesse. But he got one part of that wrong.
This is not meth.
Walt blows up the office, gets the money, and books it home. This episode is awesome. It's a bit of a turning point for Walt's character. You can feel him getting increasingly more confident, and his pride and ego is starting to swell a bit. Like, at this point, you can still justify a lot of his actions, even if you disagree with the way he goes about things. This episode also introduces Walt's beautiful bald head, along with his Heisenberg persona. We got a lot more Skinny Pete in this episode as well. I love you, Skinny Pete. And the ending scene is amazing, of course. This is getting a solid S tier for me. Top of the list so far. Season 1, Episode 7. A no rough stuff type deal. Walt attends a meeting with Skylar concerning the stolen lab equipment from Walt's class, along with the firing of Hugo. Rest in peace, Hugo. Walt decides to distract his wife with secret tips on how to find the destroyer and battleship, and they end up playing an enthralling round later after the meeting. Later, we find out Jesse is trying to sell his house, and Walt tells him that he struck up a deal with Tuco. Jesse doesn't believe him at first, but Walt explains how he and him will be making £2 a week for Tuco every week, which infuriates Jesse, explaining how getting the pseudo for that amount is near impossible. Nevertheless, the two of them meet Tuco that week, but they come £1.50 short, angering Tuco. Tuco gives the two of them $17,000, but Walt not only asks for the full amount, but offers to make him £4 the next week, again infuriating Jesse. Walt comes up with an idea to substitute the pseudo and the meth, causing Jesse to say one of the most culturally significant phrases in all of history.
Yeah, Mr. White. Yes, science.
Walt leaves Jesse to find the tools and ingredients for their operation. Later, we see Holly's baby shower, where Skylar opens up a gift from Marie, which turns out to be a $500 golden white tiara. Walt later talks to Skylar about how he'll be going to a sweat lodge for his cancer treatments, when in reality he'll be cooking more meth with Jesse. Walt realizes they don't have any methylamine, so he concocts a plan with Jesse to break into a building and steal a barrel of it in this amazing scene. Meanwhile, Skylar tries to return the tiara to the place Marie bought it from, but they accuse her of stealing it, so she gets out of the situation by pretending to go into labor. This is where Skylar peaks as a character. She tries confronting Marie about it, but she denies stealing it. Walt and Jesse try to cook in the RV again, but it decides it's not really feeling up to it right now, so they cook it in the basement during an open house. Shockingly, they manage to get away with it, but it's still really tense. Later, they sell the meth to Tuco and get a sizable amount of cash, and this is where we're introduced to the show's iconic blue meth. Tuco's partner says something that rubs him the wrong way, so Tuco takes a reasonable approach to the situation and punches the shit out of him. This episode is really good. Even though the Skylar subplot was kind of unnecessary, it doesn't take up too much time, and the rest of the episode is awesome. I'm giving this last episode an A tier. An amazing end to an amazing season. Season 2, Episode 1. 737. The season begins with Lotso from Toy Story 3 taking a bath in the pool of the White residence. One of his eyes tragically fell out, but it makes sense once you realize that half his entire body is charred, beginning the big cliffhanger of the entire season. After this, the episode takes place right where we left off, with Tuco beating the shit out of one of his partners. After Walt figures out he'll need $737,000 total to make for his family. Get it? Tuco finds him and Jesse to save his partner from dying, but at that point it's too late. Walt and Jesse both realize how unhinged Tuco truly is, showing how he will beat up his closest partners over even the smallest of things, and that they are both now likely under the imminent threat of danger. When I rewatched this next scene, I went, huh, this doesn't look familiar. Alright, Skylar's ready for something. Okay, she's putting, oh wait, oh no. No, Walt, don't do it. No. I completely forgot about that scene, but when I rewatched it, it hit me like a truck. Later, Walt and Jesse talk to each other about the situation they're in and how they're going to attempt to kill Tuco. Walt comes up with a solution to their problems.
Beans.
Beans.
More specifically, ricin, an extremely toxic poison. Meanwhile, Skylar and Marie are on shakier grounds than Russia and America during the Cold War. But before Skylar can go full nuclear, Hank tries to clear things up, which makes things much worse. This scene was great, with Skylar spilling her guts to Hank about everything. Anna Gunn's acting is incredible here. Hank apologizes to Walter later, but during the call, Hank decides to send him some pictures of dead bodies. Oh great, dead bodies. I wonder which one's he'll... Oh my god! Gonzo's dead! This alerts Walt and Jesse to go on the defensive, so Walt goes back to his house, presumably to tell Skylar about Tuco. But before he can tell her anything, he sees Jesse pull up to his house, and would you look at that, Jesse brought a friend to play with. I wonder who it is. Oh dear. Overall, this episode is pretty great, with some great scenes here and there, especially the confrontation in the last few minutes of the episode. This one's getting a B tier from me. Season 2, Episode 2. Grilled. Hank continues the manhunt, with a new main target this time being Tuco. However, he requests personal time as he needs to focus on Walt's disappearance with Skylar and Walt Jr. Oh, Heisenberg, that little rascal. What's he up to this time?
Ouch. Get away from me!
Oh, this is also the episode where we're introduced to Hector Salamanca, a paralyzed member of the cartel who communicates via ringing a bell.
Why don't you like them, Theo? You don't trust them?
Tuco interrogates Walt and Jesse and finds out about his family, as well as his true identity. Tuco tells them how the DEA shut down his business earlier that morning, and how he believes Gonzo snitched to the police. Tuco pitches Walt and Jesse the brilliant idea of taking the two of them down to Mexico, where they can work with him full-time without the worry of the feds. But the two of them reject this offer. Tuco almost takes a hit of their ricin-laced meth, but Jesse accidentally convinces him not to take it.
And you better hope they got room in the trunk.
I don't think Tuco likes Jesse. The two concoct a plan to poison Tuco's burrito, but Captain Ding Dong pulls a fast one and manages to rat the both of them out, infuriating Tuco. He starts beating the piss out of Jesse once again, but Jesse finds a rock on the ground as Tuco forces him into the ground, and as Walt distracts Tuco, calling him a
degenerate piece of filth,
Jesse smashes his face with a rock in one of the most satisfying scenes in the entire show. Jesse manages to get the upper hand by shooting Tuco with his own gun, and the two decide to let Tuco bleed to death. They're about to get away when they notice a car pulling up to the house. Who is it? Well, it's none other than Hank motherfucking Schrader! As he has this amazing shootout with Tuco and ends up taking him down. Walt realizes it's Hank and books it out of there along with Jesse. This episode was already pretty great, but the last 10 minutes immediately boost this one up to an S tier. Those last scenes are some of the most underrated in the entire show, and it's absolutely amazing watching Jesse take down Tuco after all that he did to him. Season 2, Episode 3. Bit by a Dead Bee. What the fuck does that mean? Walt and Jesse try to find their way home, while also trying not to get spotted by the DEA. The two hitchhike a ride, and Walt tells Jesse to fuck off while he gets a ride. Walt devises a plan to fake a fugue state, and part of his plan is to... Wait for it. Wait for it. Yeah! Let's go! Walt is brought to the hospital and paired back up with his family, and Jesse is forced to be on the lookout, as DEA agents are trying to track him down, since his car was found at Tuco's hideout. With the help of Badger and his cousin, he manages to get the meth lab equipment and the RV out of the house.
Come to me, beautiful baby. I'm gonna be so good to you.
I'm not ashamed to admit I've rewound that scene multiple times. Jesse ends up being taken by the DEA and is questioned by Hank and Gomez, who reveal that they found a buttload of cash in the back of Jesse's car. Jesse tells Hank and Gomez that him and Wendy were partying for 3 days straight, but the two of them aren't buying it. They also interrogate Wendy, which goes slightly off from what Hank expected.
Where's my root beer? You wanted me to do that, kid. Where's my root beer?
Later, Walt admits to the doctor that he faked his fugue state and lies about what he did during that time for weird reasons. Like, does he not want people to find out that he's cooking and distributing meth? What's up with that? Hank brings in Hector to help interrogate Jesse, but when asked if Jesse was at his house, he tells the DEA to suck a fart out of his ass. Damn, this episode has way more sexy scenes than I remember. Anyways, Jesse is let go and he talks to Walt, who tells him that he wants to start cooking again, because that went well last time. And the time before that. Walt's thinking, it's fine. Money's not an issue. Besides, I got that box of money lying in that empty box of diapers wide out in the open. Oh shit! Walt busts back home to hide the money, and this is followed by a great scene in the show where he goes back to the hospital, with him noticing his own missing poster and riding the bus home. He also puts back in his own IV needle. Well, that wasn't in the show. Walt leaves the hospital and has a talk with Hank, who reveals his birthday gift, Tuco's own grills. When Walt leaves the hospital, Skyler confronts him about his second cell phone, a claim that Walt denies. He tries going in for a kiss, but gets rejected! This episode is really good. I think it's pretty underrated. A tier for sure. Season 2, Episode 4, Down. We begin with another vision of Lotso being picked up by a guy in a hazmat suit, who is apparently collecting evidence for something we don't know yet. Among the evidence picked up is a pair of glasses. Uh-oh! Walt and Jesse meet up at a gas station, and Walt tells him that he'll have to take a break from cooking for now, since Skyler's suspect meter is going up big time. Walt cooks breakfast for the family, presumably to save face, and Walt Jr.'s breakfast counter has officially gone up to approximately 5. That's right, I've been keeping count. And don't think I'm stopping there. Walt tells Skyler a lie about why he totally didn't have a second cell phone, but Walt is arguably one of the worst liars in the entire show, and Skyler sees right through it. Meanwhile, Jesse gets kicked out of his house by his parents after they find out about the meth lab in his basement. He tries calling Walt for help, but Walt is too distracted by the fact that Walt Jr. renamed himself to Flynn, and Skyler keeps going out constantly. Luckily, though, Walt shows some restraint when talking to Jesse.
Do not call here, ever!
Jesse ends up falling down a downward spiral. Jesse ends up falling down a downward spiral. Ah, fuck me. Jesse ends up falling down a downward spiral of sorts, as every bad thing ever happens to him all at once. Nobody is able to take him in to stay, someone stole his bike, but when he tries to spend a night in the RV, he falls into a porta potty. Skyler going out constantly is starting to piss Walt off, so he decides to teach Walt Jr. how to drive a bit. This scene is awesome.
Brake.
I'm braking.
Wait, you're using both feet again.
It's not stopping.
That's the gas. Use the brake. Brake.
Jesse is caught sleeping in the RV by Badger's cousin, and he gets fed up with him pretty quickly, and refuses to make any more deals with him, instead deciding to sell the stuff in the RV. This doesn't last long though, since Jesse immediately steals it back. Walt tries to make amends with Skyler, but it does not go well. She asks Walt to tell the truth, to which Walt comes up with a 200 IQ response.
Then tell me.
Tell you what?
Oh, that probably won't go over well. Walt notices Jesse parked in the RV in front of their house, and they get into a huge fight over splitting the money 50-50. Eventually, the two of them settle down, and Walt gives Jesse his share. The title of this episode is beyond accurate. Everybody's lives are starting to go nowhere but down. Walt's having marital issues, Walt Jr. is having driving issues, Jesse is having issues, period, and Skyler is having responsibility issues. What the hell, Skyler? Oh my god! This one's getting a B tier. Not amazing, but not terrible either. Season 2, Episode 5, Breakage. Walt continues his lie to Skyler that Gretchen and Elliot are paying off Walt's cancer treatments, and later when he's puking his guts out, realizes someone tried to flush an entire pack of cigarettes down the toilet. Skyler, you silly goose, that's not where they go! Meanwhile, Hank gets a promotion at his job, but when he tries to take the elevator, he ends up suffering from a PTSD attack. Jesse goes back to the storage and pays for the damages he did in the previous episode, as well as buying himself a new ride, and a new apartment with a goth chick. In this new apartment, Jesse discusses plans with Badger, Skinny Pete, and Combo on when and where they're going to be selling the meth. Meanwhile, Walt goes to a family dinner at Hank's place, where Skyler continues to confront Murray and asks her for an apology. Holy shit, they still haven't made up yet? For God's sake, it's been 6 episodes! Get over it!
I'm sorry.
Oh, thank God. Later, Jesse and the gang manage to make some fat stacks on the streets, until Skinny Pete gets held up by this crackhead couple. God, every time I hear her laugh, I just want to slap something. Jesse gives Walt his half of the money, and instead of being thankful that Jesse would go out of his way to recruit his friends and make him a nice profit of money, he confronts Jesse as to why he's short on cash, and Jesse tells him that Skinny Pete got robbed. Walt tells Jesse to assert his dominance.
Take it. Here.
Walt and Skyler have another passive-aggressive argument, and Walt confronts her about the cigarettes he found in the toilet earlier.
Perhaps you might know something about this.
Perhaps I don't, Walt. Perhaps I smoked them in a fugue state.
Walt tells Jesse what he wants him to do about the crackhead couple.
I want you to handle it.
This was a pretty mediocre episode. Not a bad episode by any means, but definitely not one of the show's best. This episode's getting the first C tier on our list. Pretty impressive it took this long, if you ask me. Season 2, Episode 6, Peekaboo. Jesse takes action against the people who stole from Skinny Pete and breaks into their house. But instead of finding the couple, he finds their kid, who responds to none of Jesse's questions, only saying one thing. I'm hungry. Walt goes back to teaching after his leave, and Gretchen calls to check in on Skylar and Walt, and Skylar thanks Gretchen for paying off Walt's cancer treatments. Meanwhile, Jesse feeds the kid, whatever that is, and plays Peekaboo with him. God, is this kid stupid or something? Does he not know that Jesse's face is still behind his hands? Dumbass. Anyways, the crackhead couple finally comes back, and Jesse holds them both at gunpoint. Gretchen takes a stop by the White household, and Walt begs her not to reveal the truth to them and asks to talk, to which she immediately drives away. Meanwhile, Jesse continues to interrogate the crackhead couple, and the husband shows Jesse the ATM they stole. They have a bit of trouble opening it though, and the wife gets mad after her husband calls her a skank. Walt has a talk with Gretchen, and they get into a bit of an argument, with Gretchen asking why Walt is doing this and where he's getting his money from, and Walt denying everything and bringing up their past that was briefly talked about last season. Walt accuses Gretchen of cutting him out of the business, which is something we'll learn about much later in the show. Eventually, it all ends with a fuck you, and Gretchen storms out of the restaurant. This scene is a really underrated one in my opinion, and it really starts to introduce Walt's ever-growing pride and ego. He comes off as incredibly unlikable in this scene, which isn't a first, but it definitely feels a lot different. Also, Jesse gets knocked the fuck out by the crackhead couple. Walt celebrates a quality day of bridge burning, but is interrupted when Skylar tells him that Gretchen and Elliot will stop covering his treatments, which is honestly a 500 IQ move from Gretchen. She listened to Walt and is keeping up the lie, but she's added her own twist to the plot. So yeah, Walter's pretty fucked. So now he not only has to come up with a lie for that, but now he has to come up with another excuse for where he's getting the money from. Walt tells Skylar that Gretchen and Elliot are broke, saying that the economy is in the toilet.
You know, she could have just told me herself.
Well, they're prideful people, you know.
Oh, shut the fuck up, you piece of shit. Meanwhile, Jesse is still knocked out, but luckily the crackhead couple didn't kill him, as they're both trying to open up the ATM themselves. Things get heated between the two of them, and the husband calls her a skank one final time before the wife decides she's had enough.
Ain't no skank.
Jesse finally manages to open up the ATM and take his money. But before he goes, he decides to do the kid a favor. He cleans up his prints, calls 911, and brings the kid outside so the police can bring him into Child Protective Services. This is one of the first real bittersweet scenes in the entire show. This ending was shockingly kind of sweet, despite all the murder stuff. Yeah, this episode is a definite S tier for me. We see a lot more backstory with Walt, we get an amazing subplot with Jesse, and some really amazing scenes. Also, here's the official skank counter.
Skank.
Skank. Skank ass pie hole. Skank ass skank. You are a skank ass skank.
Ain't no skank.
31. Damn, not bad. Season 2, Episode 7. Negro y Azul. Man, that last episode was incredibly emotional and character-driven. Let's see what this one has to offer. Yeah, this one definitely hits a lot different when you're watching this on a binge. Walt meets up with his son, Jesse.
Come on in, Dad.
Walt confronts Jesse about his now increasing drug use, and Jesse tells him that it stemmed from his run-in with the crackhead couple. After Jesse tells Walt they're way dead, Walt gets mad at him. I mean, to be fair to Jesse, Walt's the one who gave him the gun. Probably should have expected that, you fucking idiot. We're not quite to the point where Walt has no problem with death and killing people, but he's definitely entered that prideful ego stage a bit. Meanwhile, Hank is settling into his new promotion, but not very well.
Hey, please, Senor Sente! Hey, no de, hey, please, eh?
Walt does some business with Jesse's friends and find out that word is spreading about Jesse's run-in with the crackhead couple. They asked if Jesse crushed the guy's head with the ATM, and Walt sees this as an opportunity to sweeten Jesse's reputation. Skylar meets up with her old boss, Ted Beneke, and asks him for a job back at the office, while Walt meets up with Jesse to increase their territory, as well as to further spread Jesse's reputation as a tough-as-nails meth dealer. Hank talks with cartel member Tortuga, who gives information to the DEA to crack down on the cartel. Man, this episode is all over the place, isn't it? Walt Jr.'s breakfast count increases to 6, and Motorcycle Mikey accidentally reveals Jesse's true name in front of Jane.
Hey man, you're Pinkman. You're the man. Everybody's been talking about you. Yeah.
And the people Hank is working with are not the biggest Schrader fans. Hank finds an object moving in the middle of the desert, and upon further inspection, finds out it's Tortuga's head riding on top of a tortoise, which disgusts Hank.
Hey!
Welcome to
Jesse confesses to Jane about his real identity, invites Jane to watch TV with him, and things start to blossom in the Pinkman household. This was a solid episode. Lots of stuff happened and progressed in this one. Definitely some highlights in this one as well. This is getting a solid A tier from me. Season 2, Episode 8. Better Call Saul. Before I review this episode, I got a pretty funny story. So when I was younger, I remembered hearing a Bible story about this guy who went around arresting and belittling people who believed in God. And God got pissed off at him and made him learn his ways by causing him to go blind and go on this big journey to be converted from a hateful atheist to a full-blown apostle. This man's name was Saul, and by the end of the story, he changed his name to Paul. Why do I tell you this? Well, when I was younger, I heard this story around the same time Better Call Saul was first being aired. And I heard the show's title through radio ads. The thing was, though, I didn't realize this was a TV show being advertised. I thought the show's title was a phrase that people used. In this case, I thought to call Saul was to ask help from a person who did bad things. And you know what? I wasn't half wrong. So basically in this episode, Badger falls for a sting operation and gets arrested by the police. And Jesse advises Walt to call Saul Goodman, a shady lawyer who's deep in the crime world. Saul Goodman is one of my favorite characters, even before Better Call Saul. He's such a quippy douchebag you can't help but love him. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's go back a bit. Jesse and Jane play a close game of Battleship, and Jane reveals to Jesse that she's in recovery after Jesse asks if she wants to marry that Wanna. Wait. Marijuana. Mary Jane? Are you kidding me? Walt goes over to Hank's place after a call from Marie, and finds him shell-shocked from the trip to Mexico, and gives him a monologue that'll drive actors auditioning for a role wild to help motivate him. Jesse finds out Badger got arrested, and Hank returns to the DEA office and finds out about Badger's arrest. And he and Gomi decide to give him a visit. Badger is interrogated by the cops, but before he can reveal his supplier, Saul walks into the office and talks to Badger instead.
Brandon Mayhew. Ah, here we go. Public masturbation. What? I don't get it. What's the kick? Why don't you do it at home like the rest of us with a big flat screen TV, 50 channels of pay-per-view, in a Starbucks? That's nice.
On my first watch, Saul was definitely a funny character, but watching him now, it's just sad after getting all the context. Anyways, Walt meets up with Saul for the first time, and Saul tells him that the DEA is after a man by the name of Heisenberg, since the meth Badger was dealing was a signature blue stuff, and they're trying to get information that'll lead to Heisenberg's arrest. Saul tells Walt that Badger will give info about Heisenberg so that he'll get a lighter sentence. But Walt makes an offer to Saul to make sure that Badger doesn't give any info to the DEA about him, but gets rejected in the process. Walt and Jesse don't take kindly to this and kidnap Saul and threaten to kill him if he doesn't take the offer.
No, it wasn't me. It was Ignacio. He's the one. Lalo didn't send you? No, Lalo?
Who?
Oh, thank God. Oh, Christ.
It's pretty amazing how this one throwaway line created two of the best characters in Better Call Saul. So Saul ends up making a deal with the two, and also strikes a deal with the DEA. Badger gives some info to the DEA about Heisenberg, and participates in a sting operation to get Heisenberg arrested. However, Saul concocts a plan with Walt, Jesse, and Badger to have a guy get arrested disguised as Heisenberg. But Badger confuses a completely different guy with the guy Saul had disguised, resulting in this amazing scene with Jesse and Walt trying to stop Badger from dealing to the completely wrong guy, and screwing up their entire operation. It's awesome. I remember the first time I watched this episode, I had to literally pause the episode and take a breather because of how excited I was. And after rewatching it for this video, it's still amazing. I wish I could show the entire thing here, but Sony would probably resize my rectum yay big, so you'll have to watch it yourself. After this, Jesse goes home and plays Battleship with Jane again, and Saul meets Walt at his school, offering to help Walt with his meth business.
So if you want to make more money and keep the money that you make, better call Saul.
This episode is the best by far in my opinion. It introduces one of my favorite characters in the entire show, and has some pretty amazing scenes. S tier without a doubt, top of the list so far. Season 2, Episode 9, 4 Days Out. Walt goes in for a PET scan and finds out his cancer is starting to spread further, and after a meeting with Saul, finds out that he's gonna have very little cash to leave for his family. In case he goes out early, Walt decides to go on a meth cooking binge with Jesse, so Walt tells Skyler that he's gonna go cook some meth with Jesse and heads off. Just kidding, he tells Skyler he's gonna visit his mom for a few days, and tells Jesse to cancel his plans with Jane to look at Georgia O'Keeffe vagina pictures. The two go out in the middle of nowhere and start cooking, and after a few days, come up with over $1 million worth of meth. The two get hyped, but the celebration cuts very short. When the two realize the battery for the RV is dead, they try to jumpstart the RV, but with no luck. Panicking, Jesse puts out the fire and uses the rest of the drinking water that they had on the entire trip. So now Jesse and Walt are stuck in the middle of the desert, with no water, barely any food, and no service. beginning one of the most painful segments in the entire show. I literally cannot watch this part without a bottle of water. It's so painful. Jesse tries to recruit some help from Skinny Pete to pick them up, but he ends up getting lost and Walt's phone dies. Walt and Jesse try to manually generate energy to the car's battery, and it ends up working. For about 2 seconds. Walt thinks it's all over, and Jesse tells him to snap out of it and come up with something scientific, and Walt has a brain blast moment. He compiles a bunch of metal together to create a battery for the RV, and Jesse has a brain blast moment at the same time Walt does.
What shall we use to conduct this beautiful current with? Wire. Copper.
This plan actually manages to work, and hearing the car finally start has got to be one of the single most satisfying sounds in the entire show. Besides, of course,
Wire.
So the whole thing ended up being a nice little bonding experience. A nice, cute, really fucked up bonding experience. But when Walt meets with his doctor to hear the results, he finds out that his cancer is actually in remission, not growing like he thought it was. Oops! It also turns out that his incessant coughing and hacking the entire episode was also just a side effect in his treatment. But hey, at least he has $1 million worth of meth to sell, so things should be looking up in the world of Walter White. Right? This episode is really solid. It's definitely the most painful to sit through, but in this case, that's a plus. Solid A tier for sure. Season 2, Episode 10. Over. We get another teaser involving Lotso, where dead bodies are revealed to be on the scene. Walt Jr.'s breakfast count increases to 7, while Skyler tells Walt not to go into work, telling Walt to relax. Walt decides to take a nap in bed, and just kidding, he meets up with Jesse to tell him some big news. He tells Jesse about his remission, but also tells him that he'll be retiring from the meth game for good. Later, Walt gives a brief but incredibly depressing speech at his celebration party, and gets progressively more drunk and even more angry. While sitting with Hank and Walt Jr., he gives Jr. a bit of whiskey, creating a wholesome-ish family experience. But then he gives him another, and another. And when Hank tries to stop Walt,
Bring the bottle back.
Sorry, buddy. No can do.
My son. My bottle. My house.
Walt and Hank have this tense face-off, and Walt Jr. predictably pukes right into the pool. I remember rewatching this episode and thinking, hey, Walt's actually not being as much of a dick as usual. And then this scene played. Jesse plays some kissy-kissy with Jane while making some breakfast for her. And Walt calls Skyler, apologizing for his previous puke in the pool outburst. But to no avail, as Skyler gets distracted by future plot point Ted Beneke. Walt also notices that nasty-ass sewer water is leaking out the sink, and takes it as a perfect opportunity to make amends with Skyler by fixing it.
That's what I like to hear.
Ha! Symbolism. Walt later apologizes to Walt Jr. over the incident, and Jesse and Jane smoke some fat ciggies while looking at drawings Jesse made in his childhood, until Jane unexpectedly leaves the house with her dad, and she acts like she doesn't know who Jesse is in front of him. The two of them argue briefly about this, with Jane dropping a fat fucking diss.
Us. All right, I'm talking about us.
Us.
Yeah. You and me.
Who's you and me?
Jesse leaves the house after getting absolutely roasted. Skyler vocalizes her frustrations to Ted about her marriage without telling him explicitly, creating a bit of a bonding experience between the two and planting plenty of seeds for future episodes. Planting seeds. Oh, sorry, what was I saying? Oh yeah, anyways, Walt Jr.'s breakfast count goes up to 8, while Walt keeps working on getting rid of mold growing in the crawl space. It's funny watching Walt progressively get more and more desperate to save the sinking ship that is his marriage. As Jesse gets wacky with his cracky, he gets a letter from Jane, which is revealed to be an apology drawing. The two eventually make up and everything is hunky-dory again, and nothing bad ever happens between the two of them ever again. Ever.
Oh, damn!
Skyler, you dumb fucking bitch! It's becoming more and more apparent how horny Skyler is for Ted, wearing more revealing clothing and knocking over pencil cuffs like a total dumbass. Walt goes to the store to get more supplies, and he runs into a guy he suspects to be making meth, and schools the guy on the ingredients he's getting. He also intimidates the ever-loving shit out of the meth heads. It's pretty incredible seeing Walt going from, oh man, I don't know if I can do this meth thing, man, to,
Stay out of my territory.
this is a solid episode. A tier for sure, closer to an S tier than a B tier. Season 2, Episode 11. Mandala. Screw it. The episode starts off with an unsuspecting kid on a bike and Combo dealing some meth on the side. He thinks he's getting eyeballed by two suspicious-looking gentlemen and calls Skinny Pete for backup. Help is on the way until... No! Not Combo! God, I hate children! The suspicious guys and the kid escape, leaving Combo to die on the street. Meanwhile, Walter is given the chance for a special cancer treatment that will make his cancer operable, at a steep cost. It's around $200,000, so I don't know if—
I'll do it.
Jesus Christ, Walter, I wasn't even finished. It's also shown that Skylar is likely to go into labor soon. Hopefully nothing gets in the way of that. Jesse reveals to Walt that Combo is dead, and considering he called him 20 times, he must be very emotionally distraught.
Which one is he?
Holy fuck, Walter, chill out, let me talk! Jesse rightfully hangs up on him and talks with Skinny Pete, who tells Jesse that he's walking out of the meth game. Things are looking pretty terrible for the Walt & Co. meth company, so they ask Saul for advice.
Let's start with some tough love, all right? Ready for this? Here goes. You two suck, so give up.
Saul tells them about a supposed businessman who seems like the perfect guy for Walt and Jesse to do business with. That's right, Saul knows a guy who knows a guy who knows another guy who knows a guy. The next day, Walt goes to the meeting place of the businessman, Los Pollos Hermanos, a chicken restaurant chain, and ends up spending all day waiting for him to show up. Sadly, no luck. The baby is also given a due date, and Skylar goes back into work for a get-together. Evidently, it's Ted's birthday. Huh. Anybody else hear that? Eh, whatever. Wait. This seems so... This seems so familiar. Oh no. No, I remember. It's all coming back to me.
Skylar,
Yes.
I want to hear it first.
No! Please don't! Anything but that, please don't! You don't understand!
Happy birthday to you.
No! There are two tragedies in this episode. Combo dying and Skylar singing happy birthday, and frankly, I don't know which one is worse. Walt tries to meet this mystery man again at the restaurant, and after waiting pretty much the entire day, figures out who this man really is. As it turns out, the man was hidden in plain sight the entire time. This man is Gus Fring, and he's the owner of the establishment. I love how for first-time viewers, they're as confused as Walt is, but on rewatch you're like, he's on your left! Fucking look behind you! He's right there! Gus is a complete opposite to Tuco Salamanca. While Tuco was aggressive off the wall and pretty much had an entire office dedicated to his likeness, Gus is calm, decisive, and has a low profile. During his meeting with Walt, he calmly gives Walter a verbal beatdown, telling him all the flaws with his business, such as the fact that Jesse gets high often and how Walt has poor judgment. Walt basically tells him, fuck that Jesse guy, my meth is pure, bitch, and you should sell it. And Gus basically tells him, alright, I'll call you if I'm interested. Meanwhile, Skylar finds out that Ted is committing tax fraud. Oops! Skylar walks out, stating that she doesn't want to get herself into any legal trouble. Jesse is still paranoid as shit, to the point where he misses out on Combo's funeral. But things are about to get better. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. Turns out Jane is a former druggie, and she takes some heroin with Jesse, giving him one of the craziest highs of his life. Walt gets a message back from Gus asking for a meeting. Walt goes to the restaurant and is given specific instructions and a limited amount of time by one of Gus's partners. What follows is one of the most tense and amazing scenes so far in the entire show, with Walt desperately trying to break into Jesse's place to obtain the 38 pounds of meth to show to Gustavo, since Jesse can't answer the door due to his insane high. Unfortunately for Walt though, the timing could not have been worse. Now Walt has to choose whether to cancel his meeting with Gustavo and sever ties with him and possibly never be able to sell his meth, or not to see the birth of his own child, which would raise huge red flags for Skylar. What does he do? We'll find out next episode. Executive producer Vince Gilligan. Holy shit, this episode is awesome. An incredibly eventful episode too. Combo's fucking dead. We finally meet Gus Fring. That ending scene is spectacular, along with the meeting of Gus and Walt being a highlight. This episode is fantastic. S tier without a doubt. Season 2, Episode 12. Phoenix. We continue the episode right where we left off, with Walt in a hurry to the hospital, presumably after completing the deal with Gus. He talks to Marie, saying how he got stuck in traffic, and finds out that the delivery was successful. Ah, Jesus Christ, it scared me! Walt makes it to the hospital and says hello to his new baby girl, Holly, and Ted says hello to Walt. Wait, Ted, what the fuck? Yeah, remember when I said Skylar supposedly quit her job after finding out about the tax fraud? Well, she just kinda went right back the next day, and then proceeded to nearly give birth in the office, and got a hospital ride from Ted. Damn, that is some next level cucking shit right here. The only thing that could have made it worse is if Ted delivered the baby himself. Anyway, Skylar asks him to get her overnight bag from home, but before he grabs it, he decides to count up the money he made from his big drug deal, showing that the deal went off without a hitch. You know, besides missing his daughter's birth and all. Jesse finds out that he got robbed, quote unquote. Man, it's almost like he told the robber where his meth was or something.
Where is it? Where'd you hide the meth? Where is it? Where?
Damn, Jesse, you're bad at getting robbed. Meanwhile, Jane goes to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting with her father, revealing that she's 18 months clean. Or, I should say was, because, you know. They later talk at a diner, and Jane's dad asks if she's hooking up with Jesse, which she promptly denies. Jesse calls Walt that they got robbed, and a disappointed Walt hangs up the phone. That night, Walt has a Los Pollos Hermanos dinner with the family, and Skylar tells Walt that she'll be going back into work soon to eyeball Ted. Sorry, I mean to make money for the family. Walt also shows Holly the crazy amount of money he's made thus far from his meth business. Later that night, Holly reports Walt to the DEA, getting Walt arrested and ending his reign over the drug world. Sorry, I should have given a spoiler warning. In all seriousness, Jesse goes to Walt's classroom the next day, and the two of them get into a big argument. Walt tells Jesse that he got $1.2 million from the deal with Gus, and that he's not giving him a penny of it because he got high, because he got high, because he got high. Jesse argues back that it was his day off, and that he swears he's clean from any kind of drug. Walt tells him to prove it by pissing in a cup and testing it, and says something that rubs Jesse a little bit the wrong way.
We'll just have to depend on the kindness of strangers to get high. That and your little junkie girlfriend.
This is one of the first times that I'm actually kind of on Walt's side on one of these arguments. I mean, put yourself in his shoes. Imagine you're about to pull one of the biggest drug deals of your life, and your partner is high as a kite to the point where he's unable to move, and you also miss the birth of your own daughter because of that. I'd be pretty pissed too. That's not to say Walt is really in the right in this argument though. I mean, Jesse was the one that helped them make the meth, so it's not like he shouldn't get at least a little bit of the money. Either way, this argument ends in shambles, figuratively and literally. Walt Jr. sets up a website to start taking in donations to help support his dad, something that puts Walt on edge. The site is called SaveWalterWhite.com, and you can actually still access it to this very day. But anyways, Walt is not a happy camper about the website, seeing it as some sort of pity party, so he calls Saul and rants about it to him, asking what he can do so he can actually spend his meth money. Saul pitches the idea to have a hacker from Belarus donate Walt's money to the website in smaller doses, so that suspicion won't be raised. This is objectively the best idea in the history of ideas, but Walt initially denies it at first, basically saying, "Me, I made that money, where, mine," but he eventually gives in. Jesse complains to Jane that Walt is going insane in the membrane. I'm sorry. He got mad at me for doing heroin. Like, what a loser, dude. I never do that. Anyways, pass me that heroin. Jesse tells Jane that Walt owes him $480,000, which instantly catches Jane off guard. It caught her so off guard, in fact, that it caused her to miss another meeting with her dad. Her dad calls her, and she gets dressed and ready to go, but... Uh-oh. 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 Jane's dad decides he's had enough of waiting, and calls the police to turn in Jesse and his own daughter, but Jane convinces her dad that she'll go to rehab first thing tomorrow, and the dad hangs up the phone and leaves. This scene is amazing. Whenever I watch it, I feel like I'm 7 years old and my dad just caught me playing Mario Kart DS in the middle of the night. Jane definitely didn't mean shit when she promised to go to rehab. So with her dad coming to drive her to rehab first thing in the morning, Jesse and Jane use this short time frame to devise a plan. Walt and Skylar are comforting Holly when the phone starts ringing. When Walt picks up the phone, it turns out to be Jane, who essentially blackmails Walter into giving Jesse his end of the deal by threatening to reveal his true identity.
He's a high school teacher. What's he gonna do, give you a B-? Send you outside to clap the erasers?
Let you choke on your own vomit? Oh wait, we're not at that part yet. Walt realizes how screwed he is and eventually gives in, collecting the money to return to Jesse. He warns Jesse about Jane, telling him how he's not seeing right, but Jane shuts the door on him. Jane and Jesse both decide to use the money to move to New Zealand and stay clean from heroin forever. But they decide to do one last drug trip before they begin. Walt stops by a bar on his way home and runs into who else but Jane's father. The two of them have a nice conversation about water on Mars, family, and the frustration of having to deal with loved ones doing terrible things, with Jane's dad of course having Jane, and Walter having Jesse. The thing is though, Walt describes his situation as if Jesse is a loved one, showing that he truly does still care about Jesse. After this, Walt decides to go to Jesse's apartment to try and patch things up, and discovers that Jesse is on yet another heroin binge. Disappointed, Walt goes inside, discovering both Jesse and Jane are passed out. Well, kind of. This is a hard one to watch. Apparently during the shooting of this scene, Bryan Cranston saw the face of his daughter and Jane's face for a brief moment, creating this visceral reaction. It's one of the most important events to happen in the entire show, and a lot of people argue to this day on whether or not Walt should have saved her. On the one hand, obviously he could have easily saved her life, but keeping her alive would mean her and Jesse would leave Albuquerque, and Walty Walt over here didn't want that. Plus, Walt knew that Jane was a bad influence for Jesse, so this created the perfect excuse. But then again, her death would emotionally break Jesse along with her entire family. Wow, this is scary! This is another easy S tier for sure. Season 2, Episode 13, Abiquiu. Phew! We finally made it to the last episode of Season 2. The episode starts with the last black and white cold open of the season, with those dudes from Monsters Inc. collecting evidence of the white residence. We get a big pan-out shot showing the extent of the damage of this future event. What could it be? Could it be the cartel's doing? Could it be another force we don't even know yet? Could it even be Walter White himself? Oh, okay, I'll shut up now. We see Jesse desperately trying to resuscitate Jane, but with no luck. Aaron Paul deserved those Emmys, man. He calls Walt to tell him about the death, and Walt sits down, definitely shocked, surprised, and completely taken aback by what Jesse just told him. Walt calls Saul for help, and he sends over his PI, Mike Ehrmantraut, to slap some sense back into Jesse. Apparently, the only reason the writers created Mike was because Bob Odenkirk couldn't come in that day to play Saul. So they were like, hey, let's just make this one-time character. Say he's Saul's PI or something. Surely he won't become one of the most fleshed out and integral characters in the Breaking Bad universe or anything like that. Mike collects evidence from the scene, slaps Jesse, and heads out. Junior's breakfast counter goes up to 9.
Flynn!
Oh, sorry, Flynn's breakfast counter goes up to 9, which pisses off Walter. The him being called Flynn thing, not the breakfast counter thing. He doesn't technically eat breakfast, but fuck it, I'm counting it. The reason for this is because Save Walter White is doing big numbers, though poor Flynn over here doesn't even realize how filthy that money really is. Jane's dad pulls up to her house to take her to rehab, not realizing that she's fucking dead. He notices an ambulance, goes into the house, and sees the body of Jane inside. Hank gives a meeting to the DEA, and explains why he thinks that the guy they arrested a few episodes ago isn't their main man, and that the real Heisenberg is still out there. What? No! Anyways, Walter, finds out that Jesse is starting to go a little bit crazy after the whole Jane dying thing, and finds him in a crack house. Jane's dad cancels the rehab and looks around Jane's room, as if it was a shell of what it once was. I know I'm making a lot of jokes here, but this episode is really butt-fuck depressing. Like, this is everything bad happens to the main characters, the episode, which will certainly not be the last type of episode we'll be getting in this series. Later, we see Hank meet Gus, who's donating money to support the community. Gus demonstrates here his innate ability to hide in plain sight. I mean, come on, if you didn't know this guy was a ruthless drug lord, would you question him? No, you wouldn't. Who would question such a cute, whimsical smile? Gus finds out that Walt is Hank's brother, which of course will only result in the best of events for Hank's imminent future. Jesse is currently recovering at the hot tub time machine, and Flynn is covered in a story by the news for the success of SaveWalterWhite.com. Walt undergoes surgery, and right before he dozes off, he accidentally lets a big fat lie slip.
Where's your phone? Your cell phone, did you bring it?
Which one?
This has massive consequences for Walt, as Skyler kicks him out of the house due to her not trusting him anymore, and refusing to fall for his lies. Jane's dad goes into work as an air traffic control pilot, but lets his grief get in the way of his job. And... now listen, I've had days where I've gone into work on days where I wasn't really feeling up to it, or wasn't in the best state of mind. But here's the thing, I'm a movie theater janitor. The most damage I could do is spill someone's leftover beer all over myself. This guy over here spilled much more than beer. The pink teddy bear falls into the pool from the plane in this really cool shot. And that's the season. This episode, while not the best in the series, is a very good close to the season. We get new characters, new developments, and the episode does a great job setting everything into place. Overall, this one's getting an A tier. A solid end to a solid season. Season 3, Episode 1, No Mas. Welcome back to Breaking Bad. I hope I wasn't out for milk for too long. How about a fresh serving of yellow, with a side of Salamanca twins with psychopathic tendencies? Oh, don't you worry one little bit. They're preoccupied with the current target on their hit list, Heisenberg. If you think Walt is in the shitter now, just you wait, because it's just getting started. Walt finds out that he inadvertently caused the crash that we saw just last season by choosing not to save Jane, racking him with a lot of guilt. This, combined with Skyler forcing him out of the house, is making him go a little bit cuckoo. Hank helps Walt move out of the house, and Walt almost ends the entire show right then and there.
Whoa, whoa, no heavy lifting. I got it.
No, it's okay.
I got it. Jesus. What do you got in there? Cinder blocks?
$500,000 in cash.
Walt.
Just kidding, though I still can't believe Hank didn't actually look in the bag. That must have felt amazing for Walt to just straight up admit that and get away with it. Jesse is still in rehab, and Flynn's breakfast counter just hit double digits as he rants to Walt, confused about what's going on and why he left the house. Skylar definitely seems like a mega mono bitch in this situation. I mean, who would kick their own husband, with lung cancer mind you, out of his own house? I mean, he'd have to be a meth cook to deserve that kind of treatment. There's also this really blackly funny scene of Walt attending the school's assembly, with the kids explaining the impact the plane crash had on them. Walt is definitely feeling extreme guilt, so he tries to almost justify the situation by comparing it to another, more fatal plane crash. Like it's less about the people and more about the numbers. Walt Jr. gets mad at Skylar again, and Marie tries asking her what's the matter.
Tell me what it is that Walt
Well,
did.
you know what? I don't remember asking you.
Jesse talks with his counselor at rehab. What a fine, upstanding gentleman. He looks like the kind of guy that didn't run over his own child while drunk or anything like that.
I killed my daughter.
God damn it. Skylar comes to Walt's apartment to tell him she's getting a divorce. Well, that's pretty bad, but at least she doesn't know he's a drug dealer.
You're a drug dealer.
God fucking damn it! Walt eventually confesses to it, and Skylar gives him an ultimatum. She doesn't tell Hank or the family, as long as he takes the divorce. But that's way too complicated, so for now, let's pick up Jesse from rehab.
Your windshield's broken.
Yeah?
Jesse is feeling much better than he was last season. Walt's planning his escape out of the meth business.
$3 million.
Walt is probably staying in the meth business, and the twins only killed a few people this time. So things are looking on the up and up, right? Right? B tier. Pretty good opener to the season. Season 3, Episode 2, Caballo Sin Nombre. Walt is minding his own business and listening to some sweet tunes when a cop pulls him over for having a broken windshield. If this were Season 1 Walt, he probably would have acted all submissive and breedable and took the ticket. But this is Season 3 Walt, so he isn't taking any of it.
That is just perfect! Pepper spray the man who's expressing his opinion under the First Amendment!
Walt gets picked up by Hank at the police station, and later Saul runs into Walt at the laundromat, and they go over to his house for Saul to be like, hey man, your wife kicked you out and your life is ruined and stuff, but like, can you make more meth for me? Pretty please? But at this point, Walt is starting to realize how much he's fucked up his life. So for now, he's out of the meth game. Walt Jr. is still pissed with Skylar, and he lashes out at her during dinner.
Why you gotta be such a bitch?
Hey, no.
Jesse notices that the house he got kicked out of is now up for grabs, and he gets his money back from Saul, and he's like, hey man, I know you cut off your business relationship with your partner and stuff, but like, can you get back with him so you can make some more meth? Pretty please? But this time, Saul's begging actually kind of works, because Jesse gives him a job. We'll get to that later. For now, we gotta check in on those adorable little twins and their cute little crimes against God. They meet with Hector, and using a Ouija board, he tells the twins the name of Heisenberg. Walt Jr. I gotta ask one thing though. Who keeps a Ouija board in a nursing home? Like, who's using that thing? Hey sir, lunchtime is over. We gotta go back to your room, okay?
I summon thee, out of Satan! I will take down this nursing home as an affront to God!
Ted's still up with that tax fraud business, the old jokester. And Walt calls Skylar to tell her he's dropping off Walt Jr. at the house, after his friend Lewis dropped him off at Walt's house. Damn, that is a lot of names. Saul has a meeting with Jesse's parents, and attempts to buy off the house that they're selling at a much lower price. They initially deny this offer, but Saul brings up a meth lab that was being run in the basement of the house, and threatens to file a suit for fraud unless they give him the house for his asking price. It works. While dropping Walt Jr. off at the house, Walt tries to make amends with Skylar by bringing over some
pizza.
Unfortunately, though, Skylar is already
making dinner.
Even though Walt brought over a
pizza.
She's making dinner, though, so now Walt has spent all this money on pizza for nothing. Luckily, though, Walt didn't just bring over a
pizza.
He also brought over
dipping sticks.
Unfortunately, the
dipping sticks
aren't enough for Skylar to cancel dinner. So Walt does what any reasonable man would do. Induced by rage and frustration, he takes a step back, projects his arms to the sky, and... oh yes, what a throw! 10 out of 10 stars for Walter White! Even after such an amazing throw, Walt is not doing too hot right now, and Skylar later calls him about the pizza on the roof.
When I went out this morning to get the newspaper, I saw a pizza on our roof. Keep your distance. If you can't manage that, I will get pizza.
Mike heads to the White residence to place some bugs for Saul to hear about the latest goings-on in the Titanic disaster that is Skylar and Walt's marriage. At the same time, Walt tries to sneak back into the house, but sneaky old Skylar switched the keys on him, and during his escapades nearly runs into Mike. He gets in by unlocking a passageway into his crawl space, but unfortunately for Walt, he's about to be a victim of bad timing, because some guests just arrived at the house, and they didn't bring any complimentary Jell-O salad. They walk into the house, and are about to kill him when Mike tips off Gus, who tells them not to. This episode was also pretty good. I'd give it a B tier, but for the pizza scene alone, it's being bumped to an A tier. Solid episode. I'm really sorry about the pizza bit. I thought it was funny, maybe. I don't know. I wrote this after I got home from work. It was like 5 in the morning. I was not in the right headspace when writing this, dude. I'm so sorry. Season 3, Episode 3, I.F.T. The episode opens with a face we haven't seen in a long time. Tortuga. Or should I say head, because, you know.
Welcome to
Tortuga talks to Juan Bolsa, who says he's got a present for him in a not at all unsettling part of the bar. However, this nice little tortoise wasn't the only present Bolsa had in store, as the Salamanca twins bust in, and then...
Wham! His kappa is detated from his head.
Walt figures out a loophole in him and Skylar's agreement. Since Walt and Skylar both own the property jointly, he can live in it as he pleases. Skylar tries calling the police on him, and even threatens to tell the police about Walt's operation. But both of these threats fall flat, as Walt is still technically in the right in this situation. Walt seems like a saint to everybody except Skylar, and Skylar is just taking one L after another. Jesse is settling into his new house, and Saul gives him a visit, and he's all like, "Hey man, I just got you this sick house, so can you tell Walt to start cooking meth for me again? Pretty please?" Jesse half-heartedly obliges, but instead of calling Walt, he calls Jane's number multiple times, grasping at some sort of hope that she'll call back. But every time, it comes back with the same voicemail.
Hey, if you're trying to sell me something, I've got 4 little words for you. Do not call list. However, if you're cool, leave it at the beep.
Even after rehab, Jane's death is still screwing with Jesse's head, which just hurts to see. Meanwhile, Hank is given another chance to work at El Paso, which went well last time, and an old lady mistakenly gets into a van that happens to belong to the twins.
Hello?
Oh my god, they just killed that lady. They just killed that lady in broad fucking daylight. The twins, Hector and Juan Bolsa, have a meeting with Gus about the murder of Heisenberg, and Gus essentially tells them, "Hey man, that guy's cooking some dope-ass meth for me, so don't kill him please. You can kill him after he's done working for me though." Juan Bolsa tells him that he'd better hurry up with his business, as there's no guarantee that the twins are gonna remain patient. Walt pisses in a sink. That's all I wrote in the script. I'm not cutting this out of the video either. It's staying. Skylar tells her lawyer that Walt's a meth cook, and while their lawyer advises her to sue for divorce immediately, Skylar knows the repercussions it'll have on the family, so she decides not to. Hank is on a crime-busting withdrawal, so he goes to a skeevy bar to try and stop some drug dealers, and ends up getting into a fist fight. Meanwhile, Walt tries talking it out with Skylar, saying that he only cooked meth to make money for the family. However, Skylar has had enough of Walt's excuses, and she decides to go full force on the nuclear option. What's this nuclear option, you ask? Well, as Walt tries to build rapport back up with Skylar, she drops the bombshell of the century. Played Battleship with Ted. This can only have positive connotations for the future of their marriage. This episode was a low B tier, very close to a C tier. There were some good scenes, but pretty forgettable overall. Season 3, Episode 4, Greenlight. After the bombshell that was the previous episode, Walt is very excited to have a calm, pleasant chat with Ted Beneke.
Next time, you'll open the door.
He gets kicked out of the building, but as he's about to try out for round 2, he gets kidnapped by Mike, who takes him to Saul's office. Saul tells Walt to get his shit together with his marriage, and Walt puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that Saul bugged his house.
On the other
See, this is why Walt needs to get into multiverses. He's already demonstrated half his moveset in this episode alone. Oh. Walt fires Saul on the spot, and demands him to debug his house, which Mike does later that afternoon. Walt gets fired from his job after he gets a little too handsy with the principal, another contender for the hardest scene to watch in Breaking Bad competition. He runs into Jesse in the parking lot, and Jesse tells him that he's now going to be working with Gus, as he says cooking meth is the one thing he's good at. Walt acts like a supportive father towards him, until Jesse reveals that he cooked his own batch of blue meth without the help of Walt. This infuriates Walt, as the meth is his product, and he throws a me tantrum, which causes Jesse to storm off.
Hey, you know what? Eat me. Anytime, loser. Oh, hey, wait, hey!
Skylar plays Battleship with Ted, and nope, never mind that other scene. This is the worst contender for the hardest scene to watch in Breaking Bad. It's way shorter, but that doesn't mean it won't be burned into my memory forever. Hank does some investigation work on the Heisenberg case, and ends up at a gas station, where he confronts the cashier about a 1/10 of meth that was sold to her by Jesse Pinkman in exchange for gas. However, Hank doesn't know that it's Jesse. At least, not until he checks the security footage on the ATM. Junior's breakfast counter goes up to 11, and as a way to bait Walt back into the business, Gus has his henchmen give half of Jesse's earnings to Walt. Meanwhile, Hank is stuck in a rock and a hard place, between choosing to go to El Paso to advance his career, and remaining in Albuquerque to focus on the Heisenberg case. Ultimately, he refuses to go to El Paso, and ultimately, this was a pretty good episode. Not unbelievable by any means, but a good one. Another beats here. Season 3, Episode 5, Moss. This episode takes a surprising twist, beginning with a flashback to the very first episode of the show. Walt asks Jesse to buy an RV with his life savings, and the flashback shows what Jesse really did with that money, using it to pay off his student debt after working 4 hard years at Yale for a major in philosophy. And hookers. Combo ends up hooking Jesse up with the RV, and a few trash cans on the ground later, a pop culture icon is born. After another unbearable scene with Ted and Skylar, Jesse confronts Walt about why Walt ended up getting half of Jesse's earnings despite not doing any work. And Walt goes all, me, my formula. And then Jesse goes, no, it's our formula, and I'm gonna cook without you, bitch. And then Walt hangs up. Hank, becoming more and more obsessed with the Heisenberg case, tries to track down the suspect by locating every Winnebago RV in the state, but it unfortunately doesn't end well. I'm starting to notice how many more comedic moments there are in Season 3. I'm guessing it's probably take the edge off after the endless string of tragedies that was Season 2. Gomi tells Hank that he'll be leaving to El Paso, frustrating Hank, as his rock and hard place is getting tighter and tighter. Pretend I didn't say that. Walt realizes that the money was likely a bribe from Gus, so he confronts him, but not about the money. He asks Gus why he would hire an addict, and badmouths his own partner behind his back.
What conclusion am I left to draw? That you believe I have some proprietary kind of selfishness about my own formula. Some sort of overweening pride, I suppose?
Yes. To further bribe Walt, Gus brings him to the laundromat and shows him the massive state-of-the-art meth lab underneath. He offers Walt millions to work in the lab in exchange for 200 pounds per week, but Walt still refuses the offer. But Gus uses some manipulation to convince Walt to stay.
Why did you make these decisions?
For the good of my family.
Then they weren't bad decisions.
Yeah, they definitely were. Walt and Skylar try acting all sweet in front of Junior, but their mutual dislike of one another could still be felt. Whoa, the wall's dividing them from each other. Whoa, symbolism! Hank thinks he's dead in the water after all of the Winnebagos in New Mexico didn't create a lead. But a quick second look reveals that there's one more that they hadn't checked yet. Skylar is also frustrated, as on the one hand, she has a ton of cash at her disposal, but on the other hand, she'll be a criminal herself if she doesn't divorce Walt. It seems like everybody's in a rock and a hard place, and some big decisions are going to have to be made here soon. Walt gives Jesse the other half of his earnings, claiming that it's
the last money you'll ever earn in this business.
Walt claims that Gus only used Jesse to anger Walt into climbing back into the meth hole, and proclaims that he'll be cooking again. This pisses Jesse off, and he throws a rock at Walt's car in frustration. Hank tracks down the former location of the Winnebago, which belonged to Combo's mother, and upon further inspection, finds the main suspect of the entire case, Jesse Pinkman. Uh-oh. This episode is solid. A tier. Season 3, Episode 6, Sunset. A local cop finds one of the Salamanca twins' victims, and eventually becomes a victim of their wrath himself. Skylar calls Walt about the divorce papers he left in the crib, and Skylar's like, why do you want to divorce the baby? And Walt's like, you're a fucking idiot. They both discuss how to proceed with the divorce and how they'll tell Walt Jr. And Walt reveals that he'll be covering for every aspect of the child support. Skylar wants none of Walt's filthy drug money, but Walt's like, how else do you think we've been paying these bills? Huh? How do you like them apples, biatch? What are you gonna cry? You're gonna piss and shit and cum everywhere? Huh? Jesse has a meetup with Badger and Skinny Pete to start selling again, with safer guidelines to follow as to avoid another fucktastic disaster. Badger does a traditional river dance to celebrate. Hank is keeping a closer eye on the Pinkman household, and Walt talks to Junior about the divorce.
I am the man that I am, son. There's plenty that I would change about that, but here we are. And this is just But it is.
Oh, you know, you could have just, I don't know, not cooked meth! Speaking of cooking meth, Walt shows up at the laundromat and meets his new lab partner, Gail Bedecker. Gail is a soft-spoken but incredibly smart scientist, hired by Gus to essentially be Jesse's replacement. Gail pretty much acts and talks like your average Reddit user, but he's great. Hank keeps keeping his eye out for Jesse Pinkman, while eating an average, well-proportioned American meal. Marie suggests calling Walt to help with the mission, and Walt realizes that Hank is more hot on his tail than he realized. Panicked, Walt calls Saul for advice, who tells him to get rid of the RV pronto.
Did you not plan for this contingency?
No.
Well, next time plan for it, would you? Starship Enterprise had a self-destruct button, I'm just saying.
Okay, shut up.
Walt tracks down the RV to Badger's cousin, who locates them to a junkyard to destroy the RV. Badger tells Jesse that Walt's taking the RV, and an angry Jesse demands the address to track Walt himself, which sounds off Hank's "Jesse's doing crazy shit" alarms. As Walt pays off the junkyard owner, he reflects on some fond meth cooking memories, which are quickly interrupted by Jesse barging in. Walt realizes the danger the two of them are now in, as Hank pulls into the junkyard to confront Jesse. As Hank tries to break into the RV, the junkyard guy schools Hank on the law, explaining that he can't legally search the RV. Even though it's my own private domicile and I will not be harassed, bitch! Hank decides to try and obtain a warrant to search the RV, and Walt decides to play a round of 4D chess with Hank. He calls Saul once more, giving him Hank's number to try and fool him into thinking Marie got into a car crash, which ends up working. Hank enters the hospital in this amazing and intense sequence, and as he realizes he's been duped, he gives one of the best death stares I've ever seen. With Hank gone, Jesse and Walt destroy the RV once and for all, signaling the end of an era in this great scene. Now you're probably wondering what our favorite murderers have been up to. Well, the twins, not satisfied with not being able to kill Heisenberg, show up to Los Pollos Hermanos multiple times to try and intimidate Gus, who tells them to meet at sunset. They come to an agreement. They can't kill Heisenberg, but they can kill his DEA agent brother-in-law, if they so choose. This episode started off alright, but suddenly got really good in the second half, giving this one an A tier. Season 3, Episode 7, 1 minute. The episode begins with a flashback of the Salamanca twins and a not-disabled Hector. The twins get into an argument, and Hector displays his fantastic parenting techniques by almost drowning one of the twins.
La familia es todo.
Oh yeah, tell that to the court. Oh wait, you can't because you're disabled now, ha ha! Still salty after losing an intense match of COD against Jesse, Hank storms to his house and punches the balls off of him. Realizing the mistake he's made, Hank calls the police, sending Jesse to the hospital. At the hospital, Saul tries cheering up Jesse, telling him that the beating he just took is essentially his get out of jail free card.
There it is. Yo, Adrian. Rocky called, he wants his face back.
Walt also meets Jesse at the hospital, and tries apologizing to Jesse for what happened. Jesse doesn't take this lightly, and fires back with a monologue, describing his plans to sue Hank for every penny he has until he dies. Saul and Walt try convincing him that this is a bad idea, but Jesse retorts back with his frustrations, how it's just one bad thing after another, and all the while he's forced to cook meth just to make a living. Saul and Walt continue to try and convince him otherwise, but he tells the two of them that, if they try to intervene with his plans to sue Hank, he'll give Walt up to the authorities himself. What does Walt say to this?
Look, if he didn't give up my name while Hank was beating him senseless, he's never going to talk. He'll come around.
Yeah, I might have been treating him like shit and getting him into some of the most physically and mentally scarring experiences of his entire life, but he never tell on me. We made a pinky promise. Hank gives his side of the story to the DEA, and while leaving work, is consoled by Marie on the elevator. Luckily, Marie hasn't told anybody about the situation yet. She told somebody already, didn't she?
Marie. Who?
Fuck! Skylar takes a visit to Walt's new house and talks to him about Hank's run-in with Jesse. She asks Walt to try and convince Jesse not to press charges, but Walt ignores her pleas and heads to work with Gail. Meanwhile, the twins begin their attack on Hank and meet up with an eccentric arms dealer, who demonstrates his knowledge of piss fetishes and shows off his amazing bulletproof vests.
They work.
Sure as shit they do. I don't leave home without
Hank talks to Marie about how much his mental state has declined ever since running into Tuco, and admits his mistakes to Marie. In order to try and make amends with Jesse, Walt makes a call to Gus to try and get Gail fired from the lab, and Jesse rehired. But when Walt gives Jesse the official offer, Jesse gives one of the best monologues in the entire show thus far, airing his grievances to Walt about everything. Walt uses a bit of subtle manipulation, however, and manages to get Jesse back on his side. Hank admits his mistakes to the DEA, and is suspended indefinitely, but finds out on his way back home that Jesse isn't pressing charges. Even though Hank's faced some tough times, it looks like there's gonna be a light at the end of the tunnel. Until he gets a call from a mysterious number.
Shredder.
I need you to listen very carefully. 2 men are coming to kill you.
Come again?
They're approaching your car. You have 1 minute.
Exactly 1 minute passes by. I should know, I timed it. And nothing happens. Yeah, it looks like it was just a false alarm. Oh shit! S tier, not even a second thought. Season 3, Episode 8. I See You. It's just like the other episode. As Jesse is rolled out of the hospital, he sees Hank being rushed to the ER by an ambulance, giving him a lot of catharsis. Sorry, big word. Gale finds out that he's being replaced by Jesse, and him and Walt part ways right as Jesse comes in.
Damn, we should have ditched that RV months ago. It's all like shiny up in here.
Jesse tells Walt about Hank, and Walt rushes to the hospital, and is told that Hank was shot by a cartel member. Walt doesn't quite know what happened yet, but I can only assume a little shit came down his pants when he heard the word cartel. Not a lot, just a little. Jesse asks Walt when he's coming back to the lab, and Walt tells him to fuck off. Also, just a side note, it's great to see that the writers wrote Junior into the scene. I'm excited to see how they'll develop this character further.
So I'm thinking, maybe we should go get everybody some breakfast.
What? Junior's breakfast counter increases to 12, and Walt tells a story about a surgery he once had in order to reassure Marie about Hank. Juan Bolsa calls Gus, telling him that the Mexican government is starting to crack down on the cartel after the hit on Hank. Walt runs into Gomez, who takes him to the room of the remaining Salamanca twin. The twin has both of his legs amputated, but he recognizes Walt, and attempts to attack Walt by crawling towards him in this intense scene. Despite his injuries, his hatred and determination to kill Heisenberg still prevailed, and it can all be felt from the intense music, the heart rate monitor ramping up in speed as he recognizes Heisenberg, and the blood dripping from his amputated legs. He may not have been able to kill Heisenberg, but he wasn't about to let even the slightest opportunity go to waste. Here's what Jesse was doing during that scene. Gus calls Walt to ask if the meth will be cooked on time, and Walt says it won't, but instead of admitting it's because his brother-in-law almost fucking died, he instead pins the blame on Gale, and promises to cook 400 pounds for next week. Later that day, Gus appears at the hospital to support Hank and the other cops, by bringing in food and putting out a bounty for more information on the killers. He also somewhat tells Walt right to his face that he already knew Hank was in the DEA, so it's implied that this nice guy charade was a subtle way for Gus to say, "Hey man, suck my dick." But Walt's got no time for dick sucking, as the remaining Salamanca twin is dead.
All right, stopping compressions. Time.
8:43.
Time of death. 2043.
Burn in hell, you piece of shit.
Gus gets another call from Bolsa, who tells him that his house is now surrounded by police, and tells him that he believes that Gus was the one that tipped off the police. But while Bolsa promises to get his revenge, he's interrupted by the police, who shoot him. Guys, I think Gus might have been behind that. This was a great episode. High A tier. Season 3, Episode 9. Kafkaesque. Fuck it. The episode begins with one of my personal favorite cold opens in the entire series, beginning with a commercial for Los Pollos Hermanos that slowly transitions into how Gus's chicken empire really operates. Jesse complains about the fact that Walt is giving Gus extra meth to sell, due to the amount of money him and Walt are earning, saying that it's way too low for the amount that Gus is selling at, which, for the overall amount they'll be cooking, is around
$96 million.
Oh, thanks, Walt. Hank has an emotional heart-to-heart with Gomez in the hospital.
Asshole.
Hank mentions the warning call he got before the attack, and Skyler asks Walt if they're safe, to which Walt responds that they are not in danger, and that he is in fact the danger. Oh wait, that doesn't happen yet. Hank is showing signs of recovery, but the doctor states that he may not be able to walk again, and that the therapy that he'll need isn't covered by their insurance plan. Jesse meets Saul at a nail salon, and teaches him the important art of money laundering.
This is the nail salon, right? I take your dirty money and I slip it into the salon's nice, clean cash flow. Final step, integration. The revenues from the salon go to the owner. That's you. Your filthy drug money has been transformed into nice, clean, taxable income brought to you by a savvy investment in a thriving business.
I have learned a lot more from this show than I probably should have. Saul tries convincing Jesse to buy the nail salon, but Jesse walks out. Walt has a meeting with Gus about the attack, and gives him his ultimate theory. Stand back, ladies and gentlemen, this is gonna be complicated. Basically, he believes that the person who called Hank moments before the attack did it not out of the kindness of their heart, but instead to wreak havoc on the meth industry for their own gain. If they hadn't called Hank, you know what, I'll stop being so vague, you already know at this point. If Gus hadn't called Hank, then the twins would have been able to kill him silently. But with such a massive shootout, more attention is being put on the cartel by the US and Mexican governments, which gave Gus the opportunity to pin the blame on Bolsa, cutting off the meth supply for the Southwest and driving more traffic to Gus's product. Does this make sense? I hope so, because after Walt explains this theory to Gus, he asks what will happen when his 3-month contract with Gus ends, to which Gus offers $15 million to extend it to a full year. Jesus, that was complicated. Here, let's cleanse our palate and watch Walt almost die. Yay! Jesse goes to a rehabilitation meeting with the same guy that ran over his daughter, and details his former career of wooden box crating in high school. Skyler has an awkward meet with Ted, and Jesse tells Badger and Pete that they should start selling again, but this time not on the streets. Jesse obtains a bit of the extra meth cooked by Walt, and starts selling it at his rehabilitation meetings. Skyler offers Marie to pay for the medical bills, and she makes an elaborate excuse that Walt earned a ton of money from illegal gambling. She does a pretty amazing job lining up each aspect of the story to what really happened, even managing to make Marie sympathize with the pain she felt from Walt.
How did you come up with that?
I learned from the past.
Ooh. Don't think that Skyler is fully on Walt's side, though, because she still has a suspicion that it's Walt's fault that Hank is in the hospital. This episode's getting a high beat here. Really good stuff. Season 3, Episode 10, Fly. Oh boy, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to talk about the infamous Fly episode. It's easily one of the most controversial episodes of this series. You either love it or you hate it. Some of you probably clicked on this video just to hear my ranking of this episode. Now, while I usually go over the plot of each episode, this one really doesn't have much that I can go in depth about, so I'll make this synopsis a bit more brief. The episode opens up with a weird-ass intro, close-ups of a fly interspersed with Skyler singing a nursery rhyme to Holly. Walt goes into work with Jesse, and after cleaning up their equipment, Walt realizes their output of meth is shorter than expected, and stays behind to do some quick math. However, he gets distracted by the titular fly, and proceeds to spend the next 10 minutes trying and failing to kill the fly. The next day, Jesse comes to the lab, with Walt still obsessing over the fly. Jesse helps Walt to try and kill it, but again, no luck.
Now, 1, 3.
Jesse keeps trying to make meth to stay on schedule, but Walt's obsession over the fly won't allow it. Eventually, Jesse offers Walt a coffee, and sneaks in some sleeping pills to stop Walt from going crazy. As the pills start kicking in, Jesse and Walt have a conversation, which leads to Walt having a bit of an existential crisis. He talks about his family issues, the perfect moment he could have died, his conversation with Jane's father at the bar, and at one point even almost slips the fact that he watched Jane die. Eventually, he passes out, and Jesse manages to kill the fly. The next day, Walt heads home, and as he goes to bed, he sees a fly in his fire alarm, and realizes that his devices might be bugged. That's not even a joke, that's literally what it means. Now, I'll admit it. The first time I watched this episode, I did not like it. I didn't think it was bad per se, but I didn't think it was as amazing as some people claimed it to be. I thought it was out of character for Walt to go crazy over the fly, and even though I liked the last 20 minutes, I thought Walt's dialogue went on for way too long. But after watching El Camino, finishing Better Call Saul, and rewatching Breaking Bad for this series, this episode is amazing! The first 20 minutes are the funniest shit you'll ever see on TV, and the last 20 minutes are emotional masterclasses in writing, acting, and directing. This could be its own little mini-movie short film type thing, it's so good. This episode was directed by Ryan Johnson, whose track record is the definition of a mixed bag. But his directing work in this episode was amazing, and some of the shots in this episode are iconic. The writing and continuity is also great in this episode. Walt's monologue near the end feels like a trip down memory lane, or in this case, a funeral. Guys, I can't believe I'm saying this. The Fly episode is getting an S tier. I know, I can't believe it either. I was thinking a low A tier maybe, but... oh my god. Season 3, Episode 11, Abiquiu.
Yo, I thought I was gonna see some, vaginas.
The episode begins with a flashback to Jane and Jesse's visit to the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, and with Hank struggling to walk during a physical therapy session. Walt is suspicious that Jesse is stealing some of their product, so for now, selling meth at the meetings will be a slower process. Speaking of meetings, some new faces show up at the group therapy. including Andrea Cantillo, who will become shockingly important for the rest of the series going forward. So keep her in your head. She makes a good first impression on Jesse, so he returns the favor by trying to sell her meth. Skylar and Walt receive the first medical bill, and while Walt tries to pay with his drug money, Skylar tells him that he should really be laundering it by now. With Walt's hand forced, he takes her to Saul Goodman, who makes a fantastic first impression on Skylar.
Clearly his taste in women is the same as his taste in lawyers, only the very best, with just the right amount of dirty.
Saul tries to sell off a laser tag place for the two to launder their money, but the recommendation is immediately shot down. While Jesse tries to sell Andrea meth, he gets distracted and ends up playing Battleship with her. He tries to make a pitch to her about the blue meth, but gets interrupted by her grandmother returning home early, with another equally important character, Andrea's son, Brock. Skylar pitches to Walt a potential location for money laundering, the A1 car wash. More specifically, the one Walt got fired from for mocking Bogdan's eyebrows.
Fuck you, Bogdan. What? I said fuck you! And your eyebrows!
Jesse bonds with Brock, and while Jesse creates moist garbage, Brock mentions his brother Tomas, who will also become important later in the... Hey, you know what? Fuck it. Everyone in this family is important. Saul tries to convince Walt that they shouldn't buy the car wash, but Walt says that it'll make a more believable story. And Saul says that it won't work because Bogdan isn't a Danny, or a person who's in on the scheme. After a brief argument, Andrea tells the story of Tomas, and how he was forced to kill a rival gang member.
Rode up on his bike and shot him.
Wait.
He shot the guy right through the neck.
Oh my god, not again! Hank finds out he'll be released from the hospital, and Walt explains to Skylar that, with no Danny, they can't buy the car wash, to which Skylar offers to be Walt's Danny. I apologize for how complicated that line was. Walt refuses this offer, claiming that the two are divorced anyways, but Skylar reveals that she never filed the papers, and that married couples are not allowed to legally testify against each other in court. Jesse meets Tomas at the same street Combo was killed, and finds out how the dealing process is done. Jesse is enraged by the fact that two drug dealers are using a child to do their dirty work, and the cogs in Jesse's brain start to turn. Pretty good episode, putting it in B tier. Season 3, Episode 12, Half Measures. The episode begins with Wendy giving some Wendy's close to a Wendy's, and with me jumping off a bridge after writing that joke. Jesse and Walt have a beer together, and Jesse gives Walt his plan to kill the two drug dealers from the last episode, with the ricin left over from their encounter with Tuco, by using Wendy to deliver it to them hidden in a burger. While Walt obviously tells him that he shouldn't do it, Jesse talks about how enraged he is, since the meth he obtained from the dealers is their blue stuff, meaning that these two guys work under Gus and are using a child to do it. Walt tries to convince him otherwise, but Jesse is still going full force on this plan. Walt goes to Saul to try and stop Jesse, and comes up with a plan to get him arrested by the police, but Saul decides to get Mike on the job instead. Mike shows up to Walt's house later that night, and tells him that he won't do it, since Gus probably wouldn't be too happy with one of his employees getting arrested. Mike tells Walt the story of his days as a cop, about a guy he arrested that was abusing his wife. Mike threatened to kill him as an attempt to ward off a potential murder, but a few days later, he finds out that the man still killed her.
The moral of the story is, I chose a half measure, when I should have gone all the way. No more half measures, Walter.
Jesse's about to have Wendy execute the plan, but Mike intervenes, taking Jesse to a meeting with Gus. At the meeting, Gus scares the shit out of Jesse, and forces him to negotiate with the two dealers. Jesse, however, doesn't back down, telling Gus about them using Tomas in their operation. Gus tells the drug dealers, hey, knock it off of those kids, you two, and tells Jesse to keep the peace. However, this peace is not going to be kept for very long. As Jesse and Andrea find out that Tomas was murdered by the two drug dealers, the two go to the crime scene, both in shock at the dead body that lay before them. A million thoughts are running through Jesse's brain, as a feeling of fear and dread can be seen rushing through his body. Walt finds out about Tomas's murder on the news, and figures that Jesse is going to kill the drug dealers in cold blood. But Walt's already taken Mike's speech to heart, so instead of going the easy route and taking a half measure, well...
Run.
Hi, A tier. Season 3, Episode 13, Full Measure. The episode begins with a flashback to Skylar and Walt purchasing the house.
Why be cautious? We've got nowhere to go but up.
Yep. Nowhere but up. Walt meets with Gus and Mike in the middle of nowhere, and an angry Gus criticizes Walt for his actions. Walt tells Gus that him and Jesse have gone their separate ways, and that Jesse is skipping town in order to avoid Gus's wrath. Walt gives Gus the option to either kill him now, or allow him to keep cooking for Gus. Gus skeptically chooses the latter option, and assigns Gale back to being Walt's lab assistant, and having his assistant Victor make sure that Walt doesn't do anything stupid. Gale channels his inner Tupac and spits some hard fucking bars. And Gus arrives at his apartment, asking Gale if he'd be willing to take over the lab himself. Gus tells Gale about Walt's condition, and how, if push came to shove, Gale may have to take over. You know, not that Gus is gonna kill Walt or anything. As Mike starts tracking down Jesse, he confronts Saul for more information on him. Saul gives him a fake address to Jesse's location, and takes Walt to the laser tag place to meet with Jesse. Walt tells Jesse that Gale is asking a lot of questions about his cooking process, and that once he feels confident enough that he can cook without Walt, Gus will kill Walt. Walt tells Jesse that there's only one possible option left, and that's to kill Gale. Walt figures that, since he's the only person that truly knows how to make the blue meth, if he kills the only other option Gus has, Gus's hand will be forced into keeping him alive. The next day, Walt decides to kill Gale, but gets taken by Victor to the lab before he can do it. Walt realizes that Mike is going to kill him, but in his desperate pleas, promises to give up Jesse to Mike and Victor. He calls Jesse, but instead of giving up his location, Walt has another plan up his sleeve.
It's gonna have to be you.
What? No way, man.
They've got me at the laundry and they're going to kill me.
Jesse, do it now! Do it, bitch! Do it fast!
You might want to hold off.
Yeah? Why?
6353 Juan Tabo, apartment 6. Yeah.
Oh my god, he's so fucking cool. Jesse goes to Gale's apartment, and before anyone can get to him, Jesse finishes the job.
You don't have to do this.
Come on, you already know this is S tier. Season 4, Episode 1. Box Cutter. Boom! Gale's dead. We begin immediately where we left off, with Jesse giving Gale a really bad concussion, and allows himself to be captured by Victor, who takes him to the lab where Walt currently presides. Victor tells Mike, who calls Gus to break him the bad news. Wait, holy shit. The bills for Hank's treatment are starting to pile up, and Marie notices that Walt is still parked in the driveway, and suggests to Skylar that Walt might have been kidnapped. And Skylar drives her car to the super lab, beats up Mike, and saves Walt from Gus's wrath. At least that's how it should have gone, but unfortunately, Vince was too lame to add that in. Wow, Vince! Very fucking bad episode, Vince!
Oh, hey. Breakfast?
I swear to God, this has to be intentional. Worried, Skylar begins a manhunt to track Walt down, including calling Saul for where he last saw him, and breaking into Walt's house. By the way, this is also the episode where we're introduced to Huel Babineau, Saul's new bodyguard and somewhat lifelong partner. I'm still shocked how late he was introduced into the show, considering the massive cultural impact he's had on our species. Hank is back at home, after Marie betted that, if she managed to give Hank a raging boner, he would leave the hospital.
Marie, give up. I mean, seriously, it's... not...
This show is awesome. Hank is starting to become a miserable ass, and he begins his infamous rock collection.
It's a mineral collection.
Shut up. Walt says that they should really start cooking, so Victor says, "Screw you, man, check this out," and starts showing off what he learned from spying on Walt. Later, Gus walks into the room, and Walt tries attempting to negotiate with him, but Walt is better off talking to a brick wall, because Gus is dead silent this entire episode. Walt starts arguing with Victor, saying that he doesn't know what he's doing. Even though Victor has memorized his cooking process, he doesn't truly know what it takes to recreate Walt's meth. It's like an artist tracing over another artist's work. Sure, you get the same result, but it misses the same passion and thought put into the original. And Gus definitely seems to realize this, and rather than saying, "Hey Walt, that's a good argument," he slits Victor's throat.
We'll just pick up right where we left off.
Well, get back to work.
Walt and Jesse clean up the mess left behind by Gus. Dude, what? That is so uncalled for! Walt asks Jesse what their next course of action should be, and Jesse says that they shouldn't worry about it for now, since Gus likely won't find another chemist for years. So yeah, nothing else to worry about. We should be good for the rest of... Nah, shit. High A tier. Season 4, Episode 2, 38 Snub. Walt preps for his inevitable face-off with Gus by buying a gun from this dude. The serial number is scratched off, making it less legal and more expensive. Wait, not that serial. Shooting Gale has given Jesse a lot of problems, as he relapses back into immoral and illegal behavior, including smoking cigarettes, snorting coke, and worst of all, buying new speakers. To further distract himself from the pain, he starts a never-ending rager in his house. With drugs, alcohol, and worst of all, even louder speakers, Walt practices his drawing skills, and later gets a call from Skylar, demonstrating how bad she is at keeping a low profile.
Second order of business is the car wash.
Junior's breakfast counter goes up to 14, and as Walt is about to put his new skills to the test, he finds out that Gus is a few steps ahead of him, as the new guy, Tyrus, shows up to keep an eye on Jesse and Walt.
Where's Gus? Why? Because I would like to speak with him. What?
Walter, you're never gonna see him again.
Skylar begins spying on the car wash to prepare for her future deal with Bogdan, and Hank does physical therapy with Chuck, the unsung hero of the Breaking Bad franchise. Not that Chuck, though. That Chuck sucks. Chuck sucks. Andrea talks to Jesse about money she got the night Walt ran over the drug dealers, and Jesse tells her to use it to get into a better neighborhood. Heisenberg shows up to Gus's house, with the intention of murdering him in cold blood, but receives a call from an anonymous number, telling him only one thing.
Go home, Walter.
Skylar talks to Bogdan at the car wash, attempting to make a deal with him. Bogdan acts passive-aggressive, and smacks her with a starting price of $10 million. Skylar, however, refutes back with an $879,000 price, and pulls out the numbers to back her claim. However, instead of backing down, Bogdan raises the price to $20 million. As he's still salty about Walt insulting his beautiful eyebrows, Mike, while at the bar, watches a commercial made by Saul, which graciously handles the subject matter of the 737 plane crash by depicting a plane blowing up into smithereens. Walt meets Mike at the bar unannounced, and attempts to apologize to Mike. However, Mike changes the subject matter by pointing out the 38 snub on Walt's belt, saying that it won't help with his Cold War against Gus. As Walt is about to go full Heisenberg on Mike, he teaches Walt to take yes for an answer. As the party dies down a bit, Jesse has a bit of a mental breakdown as he drowns out his sorrows with his music. And that's the episode. Pretty mediocre, certainly not one of the show's best. Feeling a high C tier for this one. Season 4, Episode 3, Open House. Walt realizes that Gus is spying on him with a not-so-hidden camera, and gives him a polite gesture. Skylar harasses Walter about the car wash, and finds out about his injury. Skylar asks Walt if he's in danger, and Walt says that he isn't, claiming that the injury was just from a disagreement with a co-worker.
Frozen peas.
Marie goes to an open house and talks to Doug Dimmadome, and lies to him in great detail about her life. As Hank is about to beat it to lesbian porn, Marie comes in to deliver some Fritos, but she made a grave error.
Look, it has all the latest
Maria said
rankings.
Cheetos, not Fritos.
Jesse offers Walt to go go-karting with him, but Walt refuses this offer, which breaks Jesse's heart. Huel takes a massive shit in Walt's house, and while Saul keeps trying to convince Walt and Skylar to not buy the car wash, the two are adamant about the purchase. Marie goes to another open house, and continues lying about her life and stealing random shit from people, while Jesse go-karts without Walt, sad, lonely, and depressed. This is arguably the lowest we've ever seen Jesse in the entire series. Marie gets caught in a lie at the open house, and is confronted about some spoons she stole.
You know what, Fatty? You are so lucky that I am late for an appointment.
Let go! You let go of it! Let it go! Let it go! Let it go!
You are in big trouble.
Marie sneaks away without any charges pressed, but still cries. Skylar comes up with a plan for Saul to sneakily buy the car wash, which involves Bill Burr lying to Bogdan. I know his name is Jack or Dewey or something, but it doesn't feel right, so I'm just gonna call him Bill Burr. Anyways, Bill Burr, who works for Saul, claims that the filtration in Bogdan's car wash is outdated, and that the wash will need to be shut down in order for it to be replaced. Bogdan realizes how screwed he is, but doesn't even realize that, plot twist, Skylar was actually feeding information to Bill Burr through a Bluetooth. Detective Tim Roberts, I had to look up that name on Wikipedia because they don't say his name in the show, asks Hank for help on a case, one including the homicide of Gail Bedecker, due to Gail's involvement in the drug world. While Hank initially denies the offer, the detective leaves the notes with him. Bogdan calls Skylar back, and after some tough negotiation, they manage to buy the car wash. And later, Hank takes a look at the lab notes left by the detective, and the gears in his brain start to turn. This one's getting a high B tier for me. Season 4, Episode 4, Bullet Points. The episode begins with two guys trying to hijack a Los Pollos Hermanos truck, and Mike taking out the two with ease in this great scene. Mike really got an earful from those two. Walt and Skyler continue to build credibility on their gambling story, including going to gambling recovery meetings, practicing with games of blackjack, and rehearsing a script written by Skyler. Walt complains about how weak he looks in the script, and Skyler refutes, saying that she's looked like a jerk since day one. Walt apologizes to Skyler for putting her through everything, and they later go to Hank's house to put their acting abilities to the test. But before that happens, Hank shows Walt the notes he received from the detective, and shows him a DVD of Gail Bedecker singing karaoke, which scares the shit out of Walt. Skyler tells the story to Hank, but even though Hank is fully convinced, Walt is preoccupied with Gail's marvelous singing abilities, and looks through Hank's notes to try and find more of his discography. Hank fully explains Gail's notebook, and his tale of trying to find Heisenberg, and Walt tries his best to pretend not to know anything. That is, until Hank shows Walt something that makes him nearly do a double take.
To WW, my star, my perfect silence. WW. I mean, who you figure that is, huh? Woodrow Wilson? Willy Wonka? Walter White?
You got me.
Luckily, Walt managed to keep Hank off the trail, showing that the WW refers to Walt Whitman, and that the phrase refers to one of his poems. Phew! Thank God we won't have to worry about that poem again. Hank tells Walt that they're currently trying to ID the man who killed Gail, and that fingerprints were found on the scene. So Walt takes a visit to Jesse in his new bald head's house to warn him. Walt tries getting him to recount the story, but Jesse's trauma won't allow it, and he forces Walt out of the house. Walt vents his frustrations to Saul, and Saul tells him about a guy who can change his identity, should things get too hectic and dangerous in Walt's life. Jesse realizes that somebody took his duffel bag full of money, but that's not important right now, because he's too busy playing Sonic Racers with a hot gamer girl. The next day, Mike wakes up Jesse, and shows the man who stole his money. But Jesse is so far gone at this point that he doesn't care whether or not he dies. Mike reports to Gus that Jesse's becoming more and more of a liability, and Walt goes to Jesse's house, realizing that he's missing.
Jesse! 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 Jesse!
This one was pretty good. Low A tier. Season 4, Episode 5, Shotgun. Walt is driving like a maniac on the roads, first calling Saul angrily, telling him to put his money away, and then calling Skyler calmly, saying that he loves her. Walt then parks at a Los Pollos Hermanos, his gun in hand, and angrily asks one of the employees for Gus. As he waits at a table, he notices that all the cameras are pointed at him, and he gets a call from Mike, who tells him that Jess will be with him today, and that Walt will have to cook alone. When Walt asks Jesse where he's going, Jesse tells him, "I don't know, man," and hangs up. After this, Walt goes full Karen and enters Gus's office, but finds out that he isn't even there at all, so all of his badass driving skills were for naught. Jesse is scared that Mike is going to kill him, but as he arms himself, he realizes that Mike is only driving around to find dead drops left by Gus's dealers. Jesse figures that Mike needed him just to keep an eye out, but Mike denies this multiple times. Hank talks with the detective, saying that he believes that Gail is Heisenberg, and that the two suspects he can think of are Badger and Jesse, but that he doesn't see either as a shooter. While the detective shows him composites of a suspect, who turns out to be Victor, Hank tells the detective that finding his Heisenberg felt like closure, and that he's finally done with the case. We get a montage of Jesse and Mike looking through dead drops, and Jesse complains to Mike about how bored he is, mistakenly referring to himself as the guy, to which Mike tells him straight.
What?
You guy.
Walt and Skyler make the purchase of the car wash official, and Skyler receives the message from Walt earlier in the episode.
It's me. I just wanted to say that I was thinking about you and the kids, and I love you.
As Mike heads to the final dead drop, Jesse notices an armed robber, who stops him right in his tracks. Later, Jesse picks up Mike, who congratulates him. Junior has a coffee with Walt, and... Wait, does this count as a breakfast? Nah, you know what, screw it, I'm counting it. We're on a hot streak anyways. Later in the episode, we find out that the robbery Jesse prevented was actually staged by Gus and Mike, in order to boost Jesse's confidence and stop his mental health from degrading. The family goes to Hank's house to have another dinner, and as Hank starts talking about how he's found his Heisenberg, the real Heisenberg's ego starts to shatter, as even though he doesn't want his brother-in-law to find out he's, you know, a meth cook, he inadvertently, or purposefully, depending on how you look at it, convinces Hank to reconsider his thoughts, drunkenly saying that the real Heisenberg may still be out there. Hank looks through the file boxes to take a second look, and makes a pretty remarkable observation.
This guy I'm looking at. You know, everything he buys and eats is organic, fair trade, vegan. Since when do vegans eat fried chicken?
A tier. Season 4, Episode 6, Cornered. After Walt's horrible mistake from the night before, Skyler starts asking Walt a lot of questions about Gale, including if he knew him, who he was killed by, and if there's any chance that the same people would want to do the same to Walt. Walt, still hungover, doesn't want to talk about it, but Skyler insists, telling Walt how worried she is about him, and says something that causes Walt to give one of the most famous monologues from the entire show.
Let's both of us stop trying to justify this whole thing and admit you're in danger.
Who are you talking to right now? Who is it you think you see? Do you know how much I make a year? I mean, even if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. You clearly don't know who you're talking to, so let me clue you in. I am not in danger, Skyler. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
For me personally, this is the moment where there was no turning back for Walt. If there were any opportunity for Walt to confess his crimes and stop being the bad guy, then it's officially been thrown out the window. This was the moment Heisenberg became Walt. Wait, shit, I messed it up. Bogdan officially hands the place over to Walt, and acts like a passive-aggressive bitch to him, and talks about leaving the place as is. Bogdan hands over the keys to Walt, and as he's about to bring home Mr. Krabs' first dollar, Walt tells him,
Bogdan. As is.
Bogdan leaves the car wash sadly, but Walt, the kind-hearted gentleman he is, smashes the casing and spends Bogdan's first dollar on a can of Coke. See, this is what I meant about Walt not being able to turn back. This is some next-level terrorist shit. Junior's breakfast counter goes up to 16, but with no Skyler, as she's left the house, still shaken up about Walt's sick-ass monologue. Walt buys Junior a sweet car, and talks to Jesse about his dead drop runs with Mike, and realizes that they may be a setup for Gus, to create a wedge between Walt and Jesse's relationship. As Jesse leaves once again, Walt gets a couple Spanish-speaking women to help clean the lab with him, as a proverbial middle finger to Gus, not unlike the actual middle finger he gave to Gus. Mike and Jesse ransack the house of the two meth heads, selling stolen meth from one of Gus's trucks, and as the three ladies finish cleaning the lab, Gus punishes them by sending them back to Honduras.
This was my idea. Don't punish them. You tell Gus to blame me, not them. He does.
Ooh. Mike talks to Gus about a message he found in one of the buckets at the meth head house, which says ready to talk in Spanish. Mike suggests hitting them back hard, but Gus says that the war should remain cold for now, and to set up a meeting to lessen the conflict. Walt apologizes to Skyler about his I am the one who knocks speech, and assures her that the family is safe. But Skyler is pissed about the car, and tells Walt to take it back immediately, since it contradicts their story.
I just worry that he'll blame you for this.
Oh, he will. Once again, he'll blame his bitch mother for taking away what his loving father has given him, so thanks for that.
No problem.
Someone has to protect this family from the man who protects this family, from the man who protects this family, from the man who protects this family, from the man who protects
Low A tier. Season 4, Episode 7, Problem Dog. The episode begins with Jesse demonstrating his hardcore gaming skills. It's so hardcore, in fact, that it starts to give him PTSD from Gale's murder. Skyler tells Walt that the dealership will take back Junior's Challenger for way less than he bought it for. So rather than selling it, Walt decides to take it out for a spin himself.
Yes, hello. I need a cab. Oh, yes, that's right, just south of the airport. Oh, that'd be great, thank you. Oh, how long do you think that would take?
Saul prevents Walt from getting into any legal trouble, but Walt tries to get himself into more legal trouble by suggesting a hitman to take out Gus.
Wrong answer. That's what the kids call epic fail.
Jesse gives Walt the inside scoop about Gus, and a paranoid Walt keeps asking more questions, thinking about what Gus could do to him, and what game he could secretly be playing. Jesse eventually gets sick of Walt's paranoia, and promises to kill Gus at whatever chance he gets. Skyler realizes that Walt makes over $7 million a year, and to aid in Jesse's plan in killing Gus, they go back to the Tuco route, creating a small veil of ricin for Jesse to slip into Gus's food. Instead of food, however, Jesse decides to slip it into a cigarette. Keep this in mind, because this one cigarette is going to change the entire trajectory of the show going forward. Suspicious of Gus, Hank takes a visit to Los Pollos Hermanos with Junior, and secretly takes some of Gus's fingerprints. Mike takes Jesse to the meeting with Gus, hearty vegetables in hand. Jesse has the opportunity to sneak some ricin into Gus's coffee, but chickens out. Get it? At the meeting, Gus makes a deal with the cartel, a payment of $50 million to conclude their business. However, the man representing the cartel rejects this offer, instead offering an ultimatum which Gus refuses. Jesse goes to another narcotics meeting with Mr. I ran over my daughter, and makes another iconic Breaking Bad monologue. He starts by saying that he killed a dog a few weeks back, not because it was sick, but because it was a problem dog. Obviously, the dog in this situation represents Gale. Jesse almost tries to justify the killing of the dog, but this hypothetical goes to hell, as he knows that the problem dog was never really a problem in the first place, and the people at the meeting start to lambaste him for killing a dog for no reason. Jesse goes on a tangent about how he shouldn't accept the fact that he killed an innocent dog, he deserves to be judged for what he's done, and eventually makes a confession.
No, you know what? Why I'm here in the first place is to sell you meth. You're nothing to me but customers. I made you my bitch. You okay with that?
Hank makes his glorious return to the DEA office, and displays his case to Gomez and George. Again, another name I had to look up on Wikipedia because they say it like 3 times in the entire show, showing that Gus may have a huge involvement in the Heisenberg case.
Hank, no offense, but I think you're really reaching.
I couldn't agree more, guys.
Sep.
What are Gustavo Fring's fingerprints doing in Gail Bedeker's apartment?
B tier. Season 4, Episode 8, Hermanos. The episode begins with a flashback to the death of the remaining Salamanca twin, and with Gus taunting Hector about his loss. We'll get back to why Gus is acting like a dick later. Gus is taken to an interrogation, and is told that his fingerprints were found at the scene of Gale's murder. Gus makes the excuse that he was only there at the apartment because Gale had received a scholarship from Gus years ago, and invited him to his house for what Gus calls
a vague investment opportunity.
Gus makes a very convincing argument, even after a few more attempted jabs by Hank. Saul meets Andrea at her new home, giving her money from Jesse. Skyler continues to launder Walt's money, eventually keeping it all in a closet. Eventually keeping it all in the crawl space. Hank asks Walt to take him to a mineral show, but secretly directs him to Los Pollos Hermanos. Hank has Walt put a GPS on Gus's car, but Walt doesn't want to look suspicious in front of Mike and Gus.
See, I didn't do it. Do it.
Walt pleads to Gus over the camera that he didn't know about the bugging, and Walt calmly goes to Jesse's house.
Jesse!
He tells Jesse to make another meeting with Gus, so that he can poison him with a ricin. Walt sees that Jesse got a text from an anonymous number calling off a meeting, which makes Walt suspicious of Jesse. Gus takes another visit to the nursing home to fuck with Hector, and we get the reason why Gus is doing this in the first place. Many years ago, Gus and his partner Max met with Hector, Juan Bolsa, and Don Eladio to pitch their meth selling technique. Max is the main cook, while Gus acts as the businessman, and they explain that Max's product is much stronger and addictive, which could potentially increase profits. Eladio asks why Gus would be needed in the transaction, as Eladio states that Gus secretly gave samples to Eladio's men, and before they can explain and beg for forgiveness, Hector shoots Max.
Míralo, tú le hiciste eso. Ahora, míralo.
Hi, A tier. Season 4, Episode 9, Bug. Hank forces Walt to take him to Los Pollos Hermanos once again.
It's more like Rocky, you know? Bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum.
Walt obtains the GPS that he placed on Gus's car, but the tracker shows no suspicious activity from Gus, which frustrates Hank. Walt tries to get Gus off Hank's back by reporting tires right in front of his face.
I live on the 4900 block of Doswell Place, and I want to report a very suspicious man who's lurking in my neighborhood.
Fucking snitch. Skyler reports that business at the Wash is good. So good, in fact, that it'll make enough money for Walt to not need to cook meth anymore. And Walt tells her that he's planning an exit strategy. Hank tells Walt about a distribution center he's found for Pollos Hermanos. And Walt tells Hank that he's too busy taking his shit. That's not a joke, by the way.
I mean, it sounds great, it really does, but you caught me somewhat indisposed.
What do you mean, like taking a dump indisposed?
Yeah.
Walt warns Mike about Hank's imminent visit, and stupid Ted Beneke takes a visit to the car wash to vent about his tax woes to Skyler. Ted is facing an audit with a potential felony charge, and as he's asking Skyler for help, Skyler remembers that her signature is all over Ted's files. So now she's essentially forced into helping Ted so that the IRS doesn't get on her case. Jesse is helping Gus carry some supplies into his truck. Holy fucking shit, that scared me. The cartel ambushes Gus, and to ascertain his dominance, Gus waltzes right into the middle of the war zone. No, Gus, you're gonna get shot! No, Gus, be careful! Jesse asks why Gus pulled a Terminator and walked into the bullets, and Mike explains that the cartel needs Gus for their distribution network. As Ted is getting his ass eaten out by the taxman, Skyler gives off the illusion of being an idiot, which gives the inaccuracies on Ted's taxes a reasonable out. Skyler tells Ted to settle his debts now, but Ted says that he has no more assets left to sell. Jesse takes a visit to Gus's house, and Gus asks him if he can cook Walt's formula on his own, and Jesse tells him that he's not cooking without Walt. Gus, however, tells him that he wants to know not because he wants to kill Walt, but because he's needed to prevent an all-out war with the cartel. Skyler decides to help pay off Ted's debt with Walt's money, and using a bug placed on Jesse's car, Walt finds out that Jesse's been taking some visit to Gus's house, which makes Walt very not happy. Jesse tells him about Gus's plan to give the cartel 50% of the distribution, and Walt's formula, but Walt believes that he's being plotted against by Gus and Jesse, as Jesse lies about not seeing Gus. Walt chews out Jesse, and they both have a mature discussion on the matter.
And now you want advice? All right, I'll give you advice. Go to Mexico and screw up like I know you will, and wind up in a barrel somewhere.
Hi, Beats here. Season 4, Episode 10, Salud. Gus takes Jesse to Mexico, and he tells a nervous Jesse that he can do it. Junior is celebrating his birthday, and Skyler gives him an important decision to make.
Big birthday decision is breakfast or lunch?
Pancakes?
Pancakes, it is.
It has to be intentional, I swear to God! Skyler sends Ted to talk with Saul, who tells him that his
great Aunt Birgit passed away,
and left him $620,000. Back in Mexico, Jesse, Mike, and Gus are taken into the cartel's lab, and the cartel starts to ask why they brought an amateur to cook. Jesse isn't too happy about these words, and starts acting aggressive towards the cartel's chief chemist, telling him to clean up the lab so he can cook the meth his way.
Who do you think you are? I'm the guy your boss brought here to show you how it's done. I suggest you stop whining like a little bitch and do what I say.
It isn't often that Jesse stands up for himself like this, but it's very cathartic. Again, big word. Walt misses Junior's birthday, and Junior goes to his house to see if he's okay. Walt tells Junior that he got into a fight while gambling, and gives a tearful apology to Junior for missing his birthday.
I made a mistake. It's all my fault. I'm sorry.
Junior gets Walt back in the bed, and Walt says something interesting.
It drives great.
That's good, Jesse.
You can tell deep down that, even after having a fucking 1v1 Final Destination no items match with him, Walt still cares for Jesse like he's a son. Jesse begins cooking for the cartel, and they film a video for their vlog channel. After Jesse finishes the cook, the cartel tests its purity, which turns out to be an impressive 96.2%. Saul visits the car wash to tell Skyler some bad news. Turns out Ted Beneke is not as responsible a spender as Skyler presumed.
3:54 p.m. yesterday.
3 hours after leaving my office.
He bought a Mercedes SL 550.
He's actually leasing it, but that's upwards of $6,300 that won't be going to the IRS. I just thought you might like to know, loath as I am to say, I told you so.
Walt apologizes to Junior for his apology, and tells Junior about how his dad died when he was young, and how his one true memory of his father was of him in the hospital. breathing in an unnatural way. The whole point of this story is that Walt doesn't want Junior's only memory of him to be of what he was the day before, but Junior says something a bit too real for Walt.
Remembering you that way wouldn't be so bad. The bad way to remember you would be the way you've been this whole last year. At least last night, you were real, you know?
It is a shame that Junior didn't get a ton of development in this show, and all that he's really known for is being disabled and eating breakfast. I'm not about to complain though, because the next 20 minutes of this episode are about to kickstart one of the hottest streaks in the show's entire run. Skyler confronts Ted about his shit-tier spending habits, and Ted acts like a whiny brat and kicks Skyler out of the office, to which Skyler confesses that she was the one who gave him the money.
From whom exactly do you think you got that $600,000, Ted? Great Aunt Birgit?
Oh shit. Gus meets with Don Eladio and the rest of the cartel, and presents Jesse to them as their new cook. Gus also presents Don Eladio a gift, a bottle of Zaviro Añejo. He serves every member a shot of the drink, but Gus refuses Jesse a shot, claiming that he's an addict and must be sober to work.
Salud.
Salud.
Ya basta de negocios. Traigan las chicas.
Gus is confirmed to be gay in this scene, as a hot chick walks past him, and he remains stone-faced on the floor. Gus excuses himself to the bathroom, and like a true gentleman, puts a towel underneath his knees, and gently lifts the toilet seat to vomit his guts out. Why, you may ask? Well, if you take one look at the dropping bodies at the party, you might realize that Gus secretly poisoned the bottle, and committed so hard to the bit that he took the poison himself.
Don Hilario está muerto. Sus capos están muertos. Ustedes no tienen a nadie más por quien pelear. Llenen sus bolsillos o váyanse en paz. O vengan a pelear conmigo y mueran.
Even though Gus managed to get most of the poison out of his system, he's still feeling very ill. And before the escape, Mike gets shot by one of the remaining cartel members, but Jesse manages to get the upper hand.
Get us out of here, kid.
Easy S tier. I told you this is gonna be good. Season 4, Episode 11, Crawl Space. Before I begin the episode, I just want to clarify something. This episode was my all-time favorite on my first viewing of the show. I've been waiting a long time to review this one, as I have a lot to say about it. But enough about that, let's get on with the episode. The episode continues where we left off, with Jesse rushing Mike and Gus into an emergency makeshift hospital. The people at the hospital are kinda stupid though, as they forget to bring in Mike. So Jesse rushes him onto a bed, blood still dripping from Mike's shoe.
This man needs help! This man pays my salary.
Honestly, I can't even get mad at that. That's just true. Walt tells Tyrus that Hank is going to start spying on the farm at some point, and offers to be the person to drive him, to which Tyrus gives him the silent treatment. Walt takes this ambiguous response as a yes, and drives Hank to the farm so he can get a good look on the property. Gus recovers from the poison, but Mike is still badly wounded, and needs to stay in Mexico in order to fully recover. While Jesse and Gus plan to hop the border, Gus tells Jesse that he is worthy of running the big-ass super lab by himself. Ted calls Skyler, telling her that he won't be able to pay off his taxes because he really doesn't feel like it right now.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Skyler goes to Ted's house to try and tell him, hey, idiot, maybe you should pay your taxes. And Ted's like, nope. Ted tries giving back Skyler's money via check, and the excuse he gives is that he doesn't want to pay with Walt's gambling winnings. Skyler tells Ted that it'll be a lose-lose situation if he doesn't accept, but Ted still decides that he's built too differently to pay his taxes, and kicks Skyler out. Gus goes to the nursing home, and tortures Hector by informing him of the death of the entire cartel.
Now, the Salamanca name dies with you.
I still can't believe Hector's actor isn't actually disabled. Hank has Walt take him to another meeting, and takes Walt completely off guard by having him drive into the laundromat. Walt tries his best to ward Hank off the trail, but none of his options work. Naturally, Walt takes the best approach to the situation. Well, Hank's disabled again, and Skyler launches the nuclear option upon Ted Beneke. Skyler hires Saul to make Huel and Bill Burr force Ted to write a check to the IRS to pay off his taxes. If this occurs, Skyler will be able to breathe easy, but more importantly, it'll make Huel reasonably happy.
Great.
Hard part's over. Here's what happens next. Three of us can hang out, play cards or watch TV or whatever for the next couple of days until the check clears.
This is what he gets for not making Huel reasonably happy. Walt is snuck into the laundromat via dirty laundry and realizes something.
Someone cooked here.
Walt realizes that he may be majorly screwed, so he interrupts Jesse's hardcore gaming sessions with Brock to plead with him. Jesse forces him off of his property, and as Walt begs Jesse for mercy, Jesse repeats Walt's words back to him.
Last time I asked for your help, you said, I hope you end up buried in a barrel in the Mexican desert.
Gus's men show up, and they do something rather shocking to him. Walt is taken into the middle of the desert, and is fired by Gus on the spot. Walt asks what he'll do if he ever shows his face in the laundry again, since he knows Jesse will quit on the spot if he found out he was killed. Gus retorts back, saying that Jesse will come around, and claims that, in the meantime, Hank will be taken care of, since Walt failed to stop Hank from investigating Gus's business. Gus gives Walt a chilling threat if he were to try and interfere with his plans.
I will kill your wife. I will kill your son. I will kill your infant daughter.
Gus releases Walt, and in an act of desperation and fear, Walt rushes to Saul's office, asking Saul for the number of the disappearing man, and desperately asks him to give an anonymous tip to the DEA that Hank is in danger.
No, you have to do it for me.
Buddy, I gotta go on living here. No, I'm way too comfortable in my wingtip.
Just call anonymous.
You call anonymously.
In a surprising moment, Walt thanks Saul as he walks out the door, and continues his desperate race against time. Walt looks around the crawl space to collect the money, but realizes that he doesn't have enough money to pay the disappearer.
Where is it? Where's the rest? The money, Skylar. Where is the rest?
Skylar.
Where is the money?
I gave it to Ted.
What?
Walt, please, please just hear me out, please.
As Walt laughs maniacally in the background, Skylar gets another call, this time from Marie, crying and panicking that the cartel has a hit out on Hank. Skylar answers the phone to calm her down, and as Walt calms down, the levity of the situation begins to truly dawn on him. There's nowhere left to go. Every decision he makes from now on will be life and death. In this iconic ending shot, we watch the camera pan all the way up. The box of the crawl space gets smaller and smaller, displaying Walt's feelings of being trapped and alone, as the score becomes heavily distorted, like ringing ears and deafening silence. It's alright, 6 out of 10. After further analysis, I can safely say that this is still my all-time favorite episode of Breaking Bad. Every aspect of this episode is top-notch, from the acting, lighting, comedy, action, cinematography, writing, music. It all comes together to create what I consider to be the best episode of the entire series. Many people write this one off, claiming that it's only popular because of the ending sequence. But trust me when I say, this episode is so much more. I've always loved the Ted Beneke tax evasion subplot of this series, simply because of how fucking hilarious every aspect of it is. And it culminates beautifully in this episode, not only creating one of the funniest scenes in the entire show, but also directly causing one of the most terrifying scenes in TV history. The last 10 minutes of this episode are also perfect. It manages to keep up this intense, nervous energy for the entire duration, but also manages to balance comedy into the mix, with the scene of Walt meeting Saul.
Just call anonymous. You call anonymous.
Giancarlo Esposito's acting is enough to make even the most cold-hearted of people shit their pants. And Bryan Cranston's screams and maniacal laughter send chills down my spine every time I watch it. I never get chills watching any movie or TV show, but this scene never fails to do so for me. Anna Gunn is also fantastic during the scene, acting as if she's looking into a shadow of her husband's former self. Not a single second is wasted in this episode. It all feels as if it's constantly moving, never giving up any energy. As stated before, the comedy in this episode is top-notch. There is never a joke that doesn't land, or doesn't fit the scene. What else do I need to say? This episode may just be the best episode not just in Breaking Bad, but in television history. With all that being said, I don't have the heart to give this episode an S tier. We're gonna have to go a little higher. I'm proud to say that Crawl Space is getting the first double S tier on our list. And if you still don't agree with me, watch the episode for yourself. You'll thank me later. Season 4, Episode 12, End Times. Walt and Skylar pack the family for a fun road trip to Hank and Marie's without a worry in the world. As the police begin to surround Hank and Walt's houses, Walt insists on staying at their house, since he's the prime target on Gus's hit list. Walt says goodbye to Holly as she cries in the back of the car, making for a pretty sad scene. Walt contemplates his current options and his life choices, as he spins his gun around. Oh. Huh. Interesting. Hank believes that he isn't in danger, since he's currently wheelchair-bound. Hank coerces Gomez into investigating the laundry, who coerces this guy, Dennis, into letting him investigate. Word spreads quickly to Jesse and Tyrus, who shut down the good old meth machine before the drug dogs sniff anything out. Later, Jesse meets Saul, who's currently planning to skip town and change his identity due to his fear of being killed by Gus, and gives Jesse his money. Jesse gets a call from a panicked Andrea, who tells Jesse at the hospital that Brock is feeling incredibly sick.
He was fine this morning. He was fine.
Huh. Interesting. Anyways, Jesse's had enough of this shit, and decides to have a smoke, and notices that a cigarette is missing from his pack. But not just any cigarette. The cigarette. Jesse rushes back into the hospital, and tells Andrea that Brock might have been poisoned by the ricin in this intense shot, and Jesse holds Walt at gunpoint in a fit of rage. Jesse believes that Walt poisoned Brock, since he and Walt were the only two people who knew about the ricin, and Walt retorts back, saying that there was no way he could have physically done it. Jesse doesn't buy his arguments, however, and pushes Walt into the ground, moments away from pulling the trigger. However, at that moment, Walt has an epiphany. Walt says that Gus is the true one to blame for Brock's poisoning, since Gus has a history of letting certain drug dealers use children in their operations, and that Gus has manipulated Jesse into killing him. Walt tells Jesse to kill him right now, but Jesse won't allow himself to do it. He realizes that Walt is right in his assessment, and is now officially on Team Walt.
Where are you going?
I'm gonna find this son of a bitch and I'm gonna kill him.
No! You'll die before you get anywhere near him.
I don't care. I'm going to do this one way or another, Mr. White.
Then let me help.
Jesse falls asleep at the hospital, and is told by Tyrus to go to work, but Jesse refuses. Walt begins his ultimate plan to kill Gus, starting by making a remote-controlled device that explodes after multiple presses. And then he's like, good enough. Not like the guy's gonna kill me or anything. Gus talks with Jesse, who tells him to stop crying over the stupid child and start flipping those meth patties. Jesse tells Gus that Brock was poisoned, which makes Gus a little more suspiciouser, but he figures that the batch is already ruined, so he allows Jesse to stay at the hospital. Walt places the bomb underneath Gus's car, and spies on him from the top of a building, ready to trigger the device. However, Gus suddenly stops walking to his car, and walks away for seemingly no reason. A lot of people think that it was way too convenient for Gus to just prance away from his car, and that he must have some ghostly bomb detecting skills or something. But think about it this way. Imagine you're a ruthless drug kingpin, and one of your most unpredictable cooks tell you that a child has been poisoned, and that they have no idea how or what had caused it. Then, as you walk to your car, you realize, oh shit, I didn't keep this thing guarded. And then you think, oh, double shit, I left Walt in the middle of the desert after threatening to kill him, and now he's probably plotting against me. Do you A, kill Walt, B, kill Walt, C, walk away from your car for good measure, or D, kill Walt? Exactly, you'd pick D! That's probably the best reasoning I can give. If that's not the case, I don't know what the fuck happened. Either way, this was a great way to end the episode. I'm feeling another light S tier on this one. Woo! We are at the big episode. Let's get this thing started. Season 4, Episode 13. Face Off. The episode begins immediately after Gus went, nope, to the exploding car trick, and Walt rushes to the car, taking off the device. Walt puts the bomb in his purse, and brings it into the hospital. Walt talks to Jesse, telling him that Plan A just went down the drain. But Jesse is distracted by the fact that Walt brought a bomb into a hospital! Don't think I'm just gonna glaze that one over.
Did you just bring a bomb into a hospital?
What? Was I supposed to leave it on his car?
What, you're supposed to bring it into a hospital?
Walt asks Jesse where on earth he can find Gus now, but Jesse is taken in by detectives due to his comment about Brock being poisoned by ricin. As he's being interrogated, Jesse calls Saul, whose office is currently being broken into by Walt. Walt starts spying on his own house, and calls his neighbor Rebecca to go into his house, in order to ward off any potential spies. Two men walk out of Walt's backyard, and Walt realizes that he's now currently in a game of cat and mouse with Gus, and he's gonna have to secure the cheese without getting caught in the mousetrap. I don't know what that means either. Walt rushes back into his house and obtains some money from the crawl space, narrowly being caught by the two men. Saul arrives at Jesse's interrogation, and Jesse gives Saul a plan to take down Gus. Saul tells Walt to meet Hector at the retirement home, and tells him about how Gus tortured the old man, about the constant god-awful news from the cartel. Walt deducts that the two are enemies, and that the plan may not be as far-fetched as he originally thought.
I know you despise me, and I know how badly you want to see me dead. But I'm willing to bet that I know a man whom you hate even more. I am offering you an opportunity for revenge.
Hector asks an assistant for the DEA, more specifically Hank, and at first, they think that he's here to confess his sins to the DEA, to finally admit his wrongdoings and go to prison for the heinous crimes he's committed. Instead, he tells the DEA to suck his dick.
A-E-I-J-K. A-E-I.
All right, that's enough.
I'm just so sorry.
Well, at least this time he didn't shit himself. Guess that's progress.
Tyrus tells Gus about Hector's DEA meeting, making Phase 1 of Walt and Hector's plan a success, and Walt visits the nursing home to begin Phase 2. Tyrus checks Hector's room for traps, as Walt sneaks out of the hospital, and Jesse is set free, as the detectives find out that Brock wasn't poisoned by the ricin. Jesse gets out of the police station, but is kidnapped by two of Gus's men. Tyrus offers Gus for him to kill Hector, but Gus refuses this offer.
It's just him, alone in his room.
All right. I'm on my way.
Maybe it's better if I do this myself.
I do this.
Gus walks into the nursing home, prepared to kill his sworn enemy with a lethal injection. Gus criticizes Hector for talking to the DEA. As Gus prepares the injection to Hector, he gives him one last chance to look him straight in the eye. And in a surprising move, Hector takes up this offer. After years of not being able to look him in the eye, Hector gives Gus a look of sadness and regret, surprising Gus. Of course, that look doesn't last very long. Walt finds out the news of Gus's death through the radio, and Jesse, forced by Gus's men, continues working on the lab. Walt takes a little visit to the lab, and takes out the two men that kidnapped Jesse. Walt tells a shocked Jesse about Gus's death, and the two burn down the lab in this fantastic and supremely satisfying scene. Walt and Jesse meet on the same parking ramp where Gus almost died, and Jesse tells Walt what happened with Brock. Rather than being poisoned by the ricin, the doctors figured out that he was poisoned by a flower called Lily of the Valley. He tells Walt that Brock will make a full recovery, and that Gus wasn't the one who poisoned him after all. The duo, now reconciled, shake hands. And that's the end of the episode. Breaking Bad is one of those rare shows that seemingly gets better and better after every season, and is best known for having some truly fantastic season finales. This episode is absolutely no exception. It's action-packed, intense, and even comedic at times. Every scene is fantastic, and they all build up to an unbelievable and satisfying climax. This is one of the highest rated and most beloved episodes of Breaking Bad, and it is not hard to see why. Season 4 was already an amazing season, with some of the highest highs the series had to offer, but this episode alone has cemented not only the legacy of the season, but the entire show as a whole. This episode was originally written as a series finale, since it was unsure whether or not the show would be renewed for a 5th season. But luckily, there's one more season that somehow tops what this season has already accomplished, where I will see you all next time. But before I can give my rating and finally conclude this video, there's one more scene that I have to show you. As the entire family and several DEA agents gather around to watch the news of Gus's death, Walt calls Skylar, telling her that the family is finally safe.
Was this you? What happened?
I won.
Season 5, Episode 1. Live Free or Die. We're finally here, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to review Season 5 of Breaking Bad, or as the Webster Dictionary defines it, peak fiction. We start off with a callback to the very first episode of the show, with Walt rearranging his bacon into the number 52.
Whoa, what happened there?
It's my birthday.
That's not Walt. What is it with Breaking Bad and Denny's? Like, whenever these characters need to eat, their first thought is always, oh, let's go to Denny's. Denny's is painfully average. It is not good. Go to Waffle House. I know there's a much stronger likelihood that you'll get shot there, but it doesn't matter. You get dinner and a show. Anyways, a disheveled-looking Walt claims that he's coming from New Hampshire, and meets with an arms dealer from last season to get a machine gun. What's he gonna do with it? We'll find out in approximately 1 hour, 1 minute, and 28 seconds. For now, we're back in the present. Hot off the tail of the Season 4 finale, where Walt destroys the evidence and pours himself some whiskey to celebrate his victory over Gus. However, there's just one slight problem. Remember those cameras Gus placed to spy on Walt? Well, Gus's laptop has been confiscated for further investigation, which has all past and present data of Walt's meth cooking adventures. So, yeah, Mike has fun with his cocks, and is informed of Gus's death by Mr. Poof Poof.
Puff, puff, puff.
Mike angrily confronts Walt, but before he can go bang bang, Walt tells him about the cameras in Gus's lab, and how they'll all be screwed if they don't use the power of friendship to get out of this mess. Mike finds out that the laptop is under police custody, and the two argue about how they could destroy the evidence.
You are probably talking about 2 feet of reinforced concrete.
Or what about a magnet?
What magnet? What about it?
They test out the magnet idea, and the idea actually ends up working.
Yeah, that did it.
Huh?
Yeah, bitch! Magnets! Oh!
Saul informs Skyler of Ted's incident, and meets him at the hospital. He looks like a hard-boiled egg. Walt, Mike, and Jesse cooperate together, and pull off their magnificent magnet heist. Their cover is almost completely blown at one point.
Mr. White, let's get out of here.
Just 1 minute.
But their plan manages to work.
Bring Gustavo. Samsung laptop computer. Damaged. Glass screen is broken and in pieces.
Did all that even work just now?
Yes.
Why? How do we know?
Because I say so.
That is just not how you win arguments. Saul tells Walt about Skyler's fun with taxes with Ted. Walt criticizes him for going along, but Saul criticizes him back for putting Brock in the hospital, and quits doing business with Walt.
We're done when I say we're done.
Hi, A-Tier. Season 5, Episode 2, Madrigal. We open with one of the best cold opens in television history, with a German guy eating tater tots. One of the food scientist guys tells him about all the recipes of the sauces, but the German guy looks blankly, as if he's preoccupied with something. The scientist tells him to give the Cajun kick-ass sauce a taste, and it's so abhorrently awful that the German guy electrocutes himself. This German guy is the CEO of Madrigal, a conglomerate that looked over Los Pollos Hermanos and its business practices. However, after Gus got the half-off discount, the police began investigating the company for any incriminating information, and the CEO decided that he wasn't in the mood to face the music. God, this scene is awesome. We see Walt swapping out ricin bales in the cigarettes, putting the real one behind an electrical outlet, and the fake one in Jesse's Roomba, where Jesse finds it, quote-unquote, after believing he had misplaced the cigarette. He tearfully apologizes to Walt for accusing him of poisoning Brock, and the two go to Mike's house to propose a partnership. Mike says no, though, calling Walt a ticking time bomb. Later, Mike goes to a coffee shop, and has a talk with a new character named Lydia. Lydia gives Mike a list of names that were previously on Gus's payroll, who could potentially rat the two of them out if interrogated, and implies that Mike should kill the men on the list. Mike proclaims that his guys are solid, and that they shouldn't be killed. Junior's breakfast counter goes up to 18, and Hank and Gomez investigate Mike about his involvement with Los Pollos Hermanos. Hank starts to grill Mike for his involvement with Gus's drug empire, but Mike denies all of it and leaves. Walt and Jesse continue their rise back into the meth game, and they argue on where they'd be able to find some methylamine, all while Mike kicks Kaylee's ass at Hungry Hungry Hippos. Chow, the guy that Mike shot in the hand in that one episode, calls Mike to talk about his DEA meetings. But Mike realizes that Chow is being held hostage, and uses a dancing pig as a distraction to get the upper hand.
Chris, are you ready?
This is Mike.
Mike finds out that Lydia went full force on the kill everybody on the list idea, and that she was going to pay $30,000 for the assassin to kill Mike. Mike isn't too happy about this predicament, and threatens to kill Lydia, but his conscience gets the best of him, knowing that she has a daughter to take care of. Mike makes an offer to her to show where he can find some methylamine.
You still plan to move forward?
Yes, we do.
I've reconsidered. I'm in.
Walt almost plays Battleship with Skylar, but Skylar is too mentally distraught to plan out any battle strategy. This episode is good, but it kind of peaked at the beginning with a cold open. B tier. Season 5, Episode 3, Hazard Pay. Mike goes around town talking to Gus's men, informing them of the death of Chow, and reassuring them that they will get their compensation. Walt moves back in with Skylar, and Walt tells Saul that Mike will be joining the meth squad.
Mike's okay. He's okay? He said he was gonna break my legs.
Mike threatened me. He threatened Jesse. He probably threatened someone before breakfast this morning.
Fuck you, I'm counting it. Saul starts scouting the area for potential places for the meth squad to cook. One place is too steamy, the other one's a health hazard, and one's the laser tag place. But after a lot of searching, they find a place that's just right.
It's perfect. What?
How are we gonna fit a lab in here?
Who said here?
They decide to use other people's houses to cook their meth, under the guise of being a pest control company. One of the employees of this company is an upstanding gentleman by the name of Todd Alquist, a silent, neutral young fellow who will not make any impact on the series going forward. We get this amazing scene of Skinny Pete playing the piano, which gives such a sudden jolt of character development that it gives me whiplash. And they buy large storage cases for the meth squad. We get another great cooking montage, and Walt and Jesse talk about Jesse starting a family with Andrea. Jesse also briefly and casually mentions Gail at one point, which was kind of jarring to see, considering how Jesse wouldn't allow himself to even think about him just a season ago. Damn, that's some crazy development. What, does this show have good writers or something? Maria's more annoying than usual, so Skylar tells Marie to shut up.
I know for a fact that that is illegal.
Marie! Shut up!
What?
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Skylar's been very emotionally numb this season so far. Skylar can be annoying at times, but it's hard not to feel for her. Marie tells Walt about Skylar's breakdown, and Walt explains to Marie why, telling her about Beneke's accident, and Skylar's affair with him. Luckily, Marie is really good at telling secrets, so she doesn't Okay, well, you already know where this joke is going. She tells Hank like 2 minutes later. God damn you, Marie! The meth squad counts out the money from their big cookout, and Walt finds out the hard way that being the boss sucks ass. They originally made well over $1 million, but the distribution of the money costs them a pretty penny, leaving them with only table scraps.
This is business. End of story.
This is your problem. It should come out of your end.
Hey, stick out of mine. All right, go for it.
Jesse's entire role this season really is to just stop Mike and Walt from killing each other, isn't it? Pretty good. Feeling a B tier for this one. Season 5, Episode 4, 51. Walt sells off his old car and buys him and Junior new rides in one of the greatest montages in any piece of media ever.
Bonfire!
Hank investigates Lydia while at work, interrogating her about her involvement with Gus Fring. She takes them to the warehouse, and pins the blame on her inside guy, Ron. Skylar talks to Walt about sending Junior and Holly to a boarding school, due to her worry about Walt being a bad influence on them. Unfortunately, she can't do that right now, because Junior's too busy enjoying the most important meal of the day. Oh boy, just a few more breakfasts and the counter will be old enough to drink! Hank is continuing to piece together the Heisenberg case, and his boss gives him a huge opportunity to become an ASAC officer. Marie slips to Hank about Skylar's affair, as they go to Walt's house to celebrate his birthday.
Hey!
Hey! As they celebrate though, Skylar decides to go for a dip in the pool. Yahoo, am I right? Well, not so Yahoo, because Skylar is trying to drown herself. This goes so fucking hard. Jesse gets some methylamine from Lydia, but they find a tracker underneath one of the barrels. While Skylar dries off from her sick bubble bath, Walt talks to Hank and Marie about her affair with Beneke, and Marie offers to take care of the kids at their house for a bit. Walt later talks to Skylar, infuriated about Skylar not wanting the kids at the house. Walt figures that Skylar sees him as a threat, and they both get into a heated argument about Junior and Holly staying at the house, and Heisenberg begins to emerge.
This is a joke. Come on, Skylar. You want to take me on? You want to take away my children? What's the plan?
I don't know!
Man, I can't joke about this. This is too real. Jesse shows the tracker to the rest of the meth squad, but they realize that it might not have been placed there by law enforcement.
Okay. She's dead.
This episode was pretty good, giving it a B tier.
They're watching Ratatouille.
Never mind, A tier. Season 5, Episode 5, Dead Freight. The episode begins with a kid on a motorbike stopping to pick up a spider, with the sounds of a train honking in the background. Walt meets Hank at his new promotion, and tells Hank that Skylar is feeling better.
Actually, she already found someone. Yeah, Peter.
There's no way that was a coincidence. There's no way. Walt then has a sudden breakdown in the office about him and Skylar's marriage. This might be a stretch, but trust me on this one. While Hank gets him a cup of coffee to cure his woes, Walt plants a wire to listen in on Hank's meetings, and he later meets with the meth squad to interrogate Lydia. They force her to call Hank and ask him about the tracking device from the episode before, and their suspicions about Lydia being the one who placed it there are confirmed.
Hey, Gomez, come here, would you?
You don't know anything about GPS trackers on a methylamine barrel, do you?
No, nobody from my team planted anything. Why?
I don't know. Figured as much.
I know what you're thinking, but I didn't do it. I'm telling you, I didn't plant that thing.
Shut up!
Before Mike can make Lydia's head go kablooey, she tells them about a source that has an ocean's worth of methylamine. More specifically, a freight train, which is carrying over 24,000 gallons worth of it. The meth squad come up with a plan to hijack the train, and they enlist the help from Todd to aid them in their operation. Skylar remains insistent that Junior and Holly stay with Hank and Marie, and she notices some dirt on Walt's pants.
Out burying bodies?
Robbing a train.
What a badass. D-Day arrives, and the meth squad initiates their plan into full action. They first stop the train by having Bill Burr stall out right in the middle of the tracks, and Walt, Jesse, and Todd begin setting up their equipment while Bill Burr distracts the conductors. They start siphoning off the methylamine from the train, but a good Samaritan appears to help Bill Burr push his truck off the tracks, and Mike, who's keeping an eye out on the operation, tells Walt to retreat. However, Walt tells Mike to fuck off, and keeps on pumping up that methylamine until they get 1,000 gallons. They barely manage to get the amount they needed, and they all retreat, with Jesse nearly getting run over by the train in the process. With only a few kinks, their plan managed to go off without a hitch, and they now have all the methylamine they could ever need. Nothing else bad happens in this episode, and the main characters live happily ever after. Oh no.
No! No! No!
Well, aside from that one part, this episode was amazing. Fast-paced, action-packed, and kept me on the edge of my seat, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen. Solid S tier for sure. Season 5, Episode 6, Buyout. The episode starts off with an incredibly somber scene of Mike, Walt, Jesse, and Todd disposing of the kid's bike and body, with some disturbing music and visuals to boot. Jesse has a smoke, and Todd talks about the situation with love and care.
Shit happens, huh?
The meth squad grill Todd for shooting the kid, but to Jesse's dismay, they decide to keep him on the payroll, due to the fact that he already knows too much about how the meth squad operates. Be careful with that spider, Todd. You might shoot it. Mike sees that the DEA is still hot on his trail, and Skylar finds out that Walt told Marie about the affair. Jesse finds out on the news that the kid, Drew Sharp, is trying to be located by the police, and Walt actually sympathizes with Jesse, letting him leave for the day. What's that? Missing kid on the news that we're directly responsible for? Great time for a good old show tune. By the way, the song Walt is whistling there is Lily of the Valley by Johnny Cash, the same flower that Walt poisoned Brock with.
I have found a friend in Jesus, he's everything to me.
Holy shit, Jesse just got completely violated and he doesn't even know it. Mike tells Walt that the DEA is on his ass, and tells him that he's out of the meth squad. Walt tells Jesse that he'll have to take over for distribution, but unfortunately for Walt, Jesse is out too. Mike and Jesse sell their methylamine to this guy, Declan, but he figures that there's more methylamine that Mike and Jesse say they have, and he says there's no deal unless he gets the rest of the methylamine. Later, Jesse goes to Walt's house, trying to convince him to give up his other share of the methylamine, which Walt adamantly refuses. Jesse retorts back, saying that Walt already has all of the money he could ever possibly need, and asks why he doesn't want to sell his own share.
Jesse, have you heard of a company called Gray Matter? Well, I co-founded it in grad school with a couple of friends of mine. and I sold my share to my two partners for $5,000. Care to guess what that company is worth now?
Millions.
Billions, with a B. Jesse, you asked me if I was in the meth business or the money business. Neither. I'm in the empire business.
It's a pretty relatable situation to be in. Everybody wants to be known for something, or be important in some way, shape, or form. And for Walt, that's definitely a hard pill to swallow, knowing that you sold your share for something that's worth billions at such a low price. I can see why you wouldn't want to give up the chance now, and I find that to be relatable in a way. I mean, I wouldn't cook meth, but like, you know what I mean. Anyways, this speech is about to be trumped by one of the most painful scenes in the entire show. And yes, I'm including the birthday scene in this. Jesse has dinner with Walt and Skyler, who both hurl insults at each other as Jesse tries to enjoy his glass of water in awkward silence.
What else did he tell you about me?
Just good stuff. Just really, really good stuff.
Did you also tell him about my affair? May I please?
Mike forces Walt into giving up his methylamine, but Walt seduces him into not giving it up, and they have an eventful night. God, think of how many Emmys that would have won. No, what really happens is that Mike restrains Walt, so that he doesn't do anything stupid with the methylamine. But Walt manages to escape using some electricity, while Saul gets a restraining order from the DEA for Mike. When Mike comes back, he sees that all of the methylamine is gone, and puts a gun to Walt's head. But Jesse tells him about an idea before he can pull the trigger.
Look, you get your $5 million, we both do it, and he gets his methylamine, all right? Just hear him out.
Is that true, Walter? Everybody wins.
Hi, A-tier. Season 5, Episode 7. Say my name. Oh boy, Walt's gonna say the thing! The meth squad meets Declan in the middle of the desert, ready to strike up a deal. Walt berates Declan, saying that Declan's meth is only 70% pure, while his meth is 99.1% pure.
Yours is just some generic cola. What I'm making is classic Coke. Do you really want to live in a world without Coca-Cola?
Walt continues to berate him, talking about how Declan dyes his meth blue to look like his product, but how he now has the opportunity to sell meth from the greatest meth cooks in America. Declan asks exactly who he is, and Walt says the thing.
Say my name.
Heisenberg.
You're goddamn right.
A lot of people joke about how awkward it would be if Declan legitimately didn't know his name, but I feel like in this universe, it'd be like if someone didn't know what McDonald's is. It's a name so well known that it's part of the country's daily lexicon. It's really the first time in Walt's life he's ever had this moment to shine, and my god, you can feel the ego burst through the seams. As much as I love the say my name line though, I have a great appreciation for that do you really want to live in a world without Coke line. Great line of Coke. I mean Coke line. Fuck. The deal is reached with Declan, and Mike parts ways with Jesse and Walt. Mike has his lawyer put his money away in this great montage, and he disposes of his evidence and weaponry into a well. So when the DEA looks through Mike's house with a search warrant, they find nothing. Walt makes an offer to Jesse to start doubling down on the meth cooking, but Jesse is still head set on quitting the meth game, and asks Walt for his money. Walt tries his best to convince Jesse to stay, saying that he'd be squandering his potential, and they start arguing with each other.
I'm done. No, you're not. You're not done. You're not leaving. Because if you leave, you get nothing! You understand me? Nothing!
Hank is still distracted by the fact that he couldn't find any dirt on Mike, and his boss tells him that the case is essentially over, and to stop snooping around on Mike. Hank notices that all of Gus's men are being represented by the same lawyer, and tells Gomez to keep an eye out for him. In lieu of a partner, Walt hires Todd to cook some meth with him. The lawyer puts away more of Mike's money, but this time, things aren't looking too hot for him.
Hey. Hey.
Walt's breakdown counter goes up to 2 as he takes back the bug he planted in Hank's office. Walt also finds out from a conversation with Gomez that Mike's lawyer is going to give a tell-all about everything, including his deals with Mike. Walt warns Mike as he watches over Kaylee, and he flees the scene, leaving Kaylee behind. It's a really sad scene, knowing that it's probably the last time Mike will ever be able to talk to Kaylee. It's also probably one of the first times Mike has ever been genuinely shaken in the entire series, as he knows that, for the first time in a while, he has absolutely no grasp or control over the situation. Walt informs Saul over the situation, and Saul gets a call from Mike, asking him to give him his money. Saul figures that the DEA is tracking his car, so Walt decides to give Mike his money. But before he does that, Walt demands Mike for the name of Gus's men, but Mike decides that he's too cool for that, telling him that everything that happened is Walt's fault.
Wow! Oh, that's some kind of logic right there, Mike. Why don't you walk me through this, Mike?
We had a good thing, you stupid son of a bitch. We had a lab. We had everything we needed. It all ran like clockwork. But no, you just had to blow it up. You and your pride and your ego.
Walt's not about to take the beatdown of the century lying down, so in retaliation, he fucking shoots Mike. As the adrenaline leaves Walt's body, he tracks down Mike, who's sitting down in the fields, badly wounded. Walt realizes that he could have gotten the names from Lydia anyways, and attempts to apologize to Mike.
I'm sorry, Mike. This whole thing could have been avoided.
Shut the fuck up. Let me die in peace.
S tier. Season 5, Episode 8. Fly 2. Let's go! No, I'm just kidding. Season 5, Episode 8. Gliding over all. The episode opens up with Walt staring at a fly, and with Walt telling Jesse that Mike is gone.
So what do we do?
We? Who's we?
This clip reminds me of that time Jesse got roasted by Jane.
Us. All right, I'm talking about us.
Us.
Yeah. You and me.
Who's you and me?
This connection between the two lines implies that Walt and Jesse are officially dating. Bravo, Vince. Walt talks with Lydia, asking her for the name of Gus's men. Lydia gives him the list, but in exchange for an agreement with Walt to grow his business exponentially, moving his blue meth across the border.
We're going to make a lot of money together.
Huh. Where have you heard that before?
You're all right, man. You're all right. We're gonna make a lot of money together.
Oh yeah! There's a lot of little details hidden throughout Season 5. And they're all great. It makes it feel almost like a trip down memory lane, demonstrating the journey these characters have gone on. Walt meets with Todd's uncle, Jack, to plan their murder of Gus's men.
Where do you suppose these come from? I've seen this one before.
You have, more specifically, in Season 2, Episode 3, Bit by a Dead Bee. I have a problem. We then get one of the best montages in the entire show, with Jack's men taking out every single one of Gus's men in the span of 2 minutes. Later, Walt goes over to Hank's house, frustrated about the news of Gus's men being murdered.
Rocks, right?
Rocks, yes.
They're called minerals, Hank. Hank talks about a class he used to take in college, but Walt gets really bored of his story, and starts cooking meth right in his own house out of spite. Not really, but we get another montage of Walt going about his business, making deals, and earning lots of money. 2 great montages in 1 episode? I'm gonna come! Marie tells Skyler it's probably time to kick the kids out of their house, and Skyler drives Walt to a storage facility, showing how much money Walt has truly earned in the iconic money shot. Walt then finally figures that enough is enough, and after another cancer checkup mirroring a shot from the very first episode, and noticing that the towel dispenser he beat up in Season 2 is still beat up, he gives Jesse his money, and goes home to tell Skyler that he's officially retired from the meth game for good. Now, with Walt officially out, the family back home, and with more money than he could ever count, things seem to finally be back to normal. With a lot of scars, Walt managed to accomplish his goal of keeping his family financially secure, and it looks like it's about to be a happily ever after for Walt. Unfortunately, Hank's bowels are a little more active than usual today, and he decides not to hold it this time around. He thinks that the magazines won't make for good reading material, and picks Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, and... well, I think you know what's about to happen next.
To WW, my star, my perfect silence. WW. I mean, who you figure that is, yeah? Woodrow Wilson? Willy Wonka? Walter White?
You got me.
Another S tier. Season 5, Episode 9, Blood Money. We get another flash forward of homeless Walt as he enters his now abandoned house, with teenagers skateboarding in an emptied out pool, and with the word Heisenberg spray painted across the walls. He looks behind the power outlet, and finds the ricin he hid from a few episodes ago.
Hello, Carol.
We return to Hank's realization that his brother-in-law was Heisenberg the entire time, and he is absolutely stunned. He just wanted to enjoy a relaxing shit, but now he's made a discovery that recontextualizes his entire viewpoint of Walt as a person, and could shatter the entire family permanently if he were to tell. So not cool. Hank attempts to drive home, but the thought of his own brother-in-law being the person he was chasing the entire time distracts him, and causes him to have a panic attack. Hank! So not cool. After arriving from the hospital for the fucking 47th time, he looks through the evidence of the Gail Bedecker case, doing a handwriting analysis to confirm his suspicions. Lydia goes to the car wash, who asks Walt to give the new cooks a tutorial on how to make the blue stuff, since the quality has dropped down to 68%. Walt tells her to fuck off, and to have an A1 day. Skylar finds out from Walt who Lydia is, and Lydia's told to fuck off once more from Skylar, and to have an A1 day. Hank looks through all of the evidence on the Heisenberg case, connecting the dots between the case and Walt's involvement, even going as far to rewatch the security tapes from all the way back in season 1. Badger pitches his Star Trek script to Skinny Pete, as Jesse slumps back into a depressed state, and later he goes to Saul's office to give his money to Kaylee and Drew Sharp's parents, which Saul says might raise eyebrows.
Mike left one step ahead of the boys in blue, and you better believe his family's on the radar. A couple $1,000,000 shows up, they're gonna snatch it. Too sweet. The feds have already taken Kaylee's money twice. What are you going for a hat trick?
I'll freaking do it myself, Saul.
Oh, no. You might want to think about cleaning up a little, getting some rest. You look better.
Let's get it done.
Saul calls Walt, who tells him to keep the money stored for Jesse, and later goes to Jesse's house to give back his cash. Walt asks why Jesse was going to give it to Kaylee, and Jesse explains that she needs someone to look after her, and that he believes that Mike is dead. Walt tells Jesse a bold-faced lie.
I did not kill Mike.
And I certainly didn't shoot him through the window of a car with a revolver. That would be ridiculous. Walt pukes his guts out and realizes that Gail's book is gone. Later, he connects the dots, realizing that Hank must have taken it after finding a bug placed under his car. Jesse starts tossing away all his money like he's the world's most expensive parade float, and Walt goes to Hank's house, confronting him about the bug he found under his car.
You wouldn't know anything about this, would you, Hank?
Hank closes the garage door behind him and lets his rage get the best of him.
Hank, it was you. All along, it was you!
Hank confronts Walt about everything, from him driving into traffic to keep him from the laundry, to the fake call from Marie, to him killing Gus Fring. Walt tells him that his cancer is back, and that using these accusations against him is pointless, and could destroy the family for nothing.
I don't even know who I'm talking to. If that's true, if you don't know who I am, then maybe your best course would be to tread lightly.
A tier. Season 5, Episode 10, Buried. We see an old man pick up the wads of cash that Jesse was tossing around last episode, eventually spotting a mentally unstable Jesse spinning around on the playground. Walt rushes back home after getting KO'd by Hank. And Hank calls Skylar, telling her to meet up at a restaurant. There, Hank tells her about Walt, and tells her to spill the beans about Walt's meth-cooking adventures. Skylar refuses to admit anything, knowing that she willingly took part in Walt's schemes, and eventually slips out of Hank's grasp.
Am I under arrest? Am I under arrest? Hank, are you arresting me? Am I under arrest?
This is exactly why you shouldn't eat at Denny's. Huel and Bill Burr get Walt's cash for him, but they decide to take a little nap before they stash it away.
Dude. What are you doing? Huel. Hey, quit screwing around. We are here to do a job, not channel Scrooge McDuck. You hearing me?
I hear you.
Dude. Ah, screw it.
Walt talks to Saul, complaining about how Skylar went to Hank without asking him first, and Saul comes up with the idea to send Hank to Belize, which pisses off Walt, saying Hank is still family, which, like, you know, respectable. Bill Burr and Huel get Walt's money, all of it stored in a bunch of barrels, and he drives out in the middle of Tahajali, an Indian reservation, to bury it. Marie goes to Skylar's house, asking her if the rumors about Walt being a drug dealer are true. Marie deduces that Skylar was in on it for the most part, and Skylar tries apologizing.
I am so sorry. You're
S tier. Marie then acts completely responsible and tries taking Holly away from Skylar. I don't care how much money you launder, that is screwed up.
You can't take that away from me. Give me my baby, Skylar. That is my child. Give me
Double S tier. Walt finishes digging the hole and puts all of the money barrels into it. Once he's done, he saves the coordinates of the barrels on the off chance he'll need it. But that day will never come, so we're good.
Oh my god.
Walt spends the night on the bathroom floor, and he assumes that Skylar made a deal with Hank, and requests her to hang on to the money as long as she can.
You can't give yourself up without giving up the money. So maybe our best move here
Is to tread lightly!
is to stay quiet.
Oh, not as cool. Lydia checks in on Declan's group to ask why the meth has suddenly become complete ass, and she tricks the group into being murdered by Jack and Todd's gang. Marie advises Hank to turn his story into the DEA, but Hank wants to work on this case alone. Hank goes back into work, and is informed about Jesse's unofficial Wheel of Fortune episode taping. Hank concocts a plan to take down Walt with Jesse, and he goes into the interrogation room to pitch the idea. Hi, A tier. Season 5, Episode 11. Confessions. Todd calls Walt, telling him that his gang killed Declan, and Todd is given the role of the main cook of the meth operation. He also recalls the train heist to Jack, skipping over the tiny detail that he shot a kid. Hank makes the offer to Jesse, asking to give himself up to the DEA to get Walt arrested, in exchange for a plea deal. But Jesse decides that Hank isn't exactly the best person to talk to right now, so he calls Saul. Hank goes home defeated, and Walt films a porno, detailing a bogus story that we'll get deep into in a few minutes. Walt and Skylar meet with Hank and Marie in a Mexican restaurant, attempting to make amends with them.
So, how about that guacamole? We make it right here at the table.
This scene is fucking unbelievable. They try to convince Hank and Marie to keep the kids out of the investigation, and they get into an intense yet silent argument.
There is no drug empire. Lying to your son, to all of us, is that right? What do I have to do to make you believe me?
Why'd you kill yourself, Walt?
What the fuck?
This whole thing dies with you, right? That's what you're saying here? Well, maybe you should just go ahead and die then.
I mean, yeah, but like... No! After Marie stops talking to Walt like she's in a COD lobby, Walt and Skylar give a DVD to Hank and Marie, which depicts a made-up story by the two, in which Hank was the secret kingpin the entire time, forcing Walt to cook for him to aid his drug empire.
My name is Walter Hartwell White. I live at 308 Negra Arroyo Lane, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87104. This is my confession.
He said the thing! Hank realizes how much of a checkmate this video really is, as he has no real defense against it, considering the fact that his medical bills were paid in full with Walt's drug money. Walt meets Jesse out in the desert with Saul, and Walt tells him about the man who could change his identity. Jesse gets mad at Walt for constantly manipulating him, to which Walt responds by manipulating him with a hug. Jesse decides to heed Walt's advice, and use the disappearing man to change his identity. He wants to smoke a joint, but Saul says, "No, no, no, no!" and tries to get Jesse to give his pot to him, which he refuses.
All right. In case something goes wrong, guy doesn't show, whatever, you give me a call.
Seriously? Hello, Kitty?
Seriously? It's free? We got a beggar's chooser situation here, so stop busting my balls.
After Jesse completes his femboy phase, he's taken by Huel to be picked up by the disappearer, and decides to have a celebratory smoke, but realizes that his pot is nowhere to be found. He realizes that Huel must have pickpocketed his pot from him, and then he's like, hey, what if the rice and cigarette was also pickpocketed from me just like that? That would be so funny. Hey, wait a minute. Jesse angrily storms to Saul's office.
Hey man, you can't go in there! He a no-show? Why didn't you call? Why didn't you... Stop!
He holds Saul at gunpoint, saying that Saul had Huel lift the cigarette for Walt. Saul claims that Walt coerced him into doing it, saying that he didn't realize he was going to poison Brock with it. Jesse somewhat calms down and runs out of the office. Saul notifies Walt that Jesse's gone rogue, and Walt retrieves the 38 snub he had stashed away in the coke machine in case of emergency. Meanwhile, Jesse busts down Walt's door and starts pouring gasoline all over Walt's house. A tier. Season 5, Episode 12. Rabid Dog. After obtaining his 38 snub, Walt heads to his house and sees that Jesse's car is parked outside. He tries sneaking in from the back and attempts to approach Jesse inside, but is surprised to see that nobody is there. Walt gets Huel to help clean up the gasoline from his house and tries his best to clean up all the evidence.
Oh, no. Hey, guys. What?
He pretends that he got gas all over himself at the gas station due to a pump malfunction, but even Junior sees through this lie. They decide to stay at a hotel for a bit while the gas fumes die down, and Walt meets Saul to get an update on Jesse's whereabouts. Saul suggests pulling an Old Yeller on Jesse, but Walt shoots this idea down immediately. Just like Old Yeller. Skyler eventually confronts Walt on his lies about the pump, but Walt brushes it off, saying that Jesse only tried to burn the house down. No biggie. But Skyler apparently thinks that this is a huge issue, and goes on an "I told you so, na-na-na-boo-boo" rant. We find out what really prevented Jesse from burning the house down. As he snorts cocaine and barges into the house with gasoline, Hank confronts him, gun in hand. Jesse tells him that he's doing this because Walt poisoned Brock, and Hank tells him to turn the lighter off and cooperate.
You can't keep getting away with it! He can't keep getting away with it!
Hank takes Jesse in his car, just as Walt notices Jesse's car in his driveway. Hank takes Jesse to his house to begin their ultimate plan to take down Walt. Junior has an emotional moment with Walt by the pool.
You think I came all this way just to let something as silly as lung cancer take me down? Not a chance. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, Jesse makes a confession tape of his own for Hank, telling his entire story of Walter White and his dealings, and they later listen to another message from Walt, telling Jesse to meet at the plaza. Hank tells him the plan. Jesse will go talk to Walt with a wire on, have him explain everything, and they'll arrest Walt with the evidence they need. However, Jesse sees this as a death sentence, since he tried to burn down his house quite literally yesterday.
Yeah, no, Mr. White's gay for me. Everyone knows that.
Nevertheless, Jesse follows through with the plan, and meets with Walt at the plaza. However, while walking, Jesse notices a man he thinks is guarding Walt, and walks to a payphone to talk, as he's come up with another plan to take Walt down.
Just want to talk to you.
No, I'm not doing what you want anymore.
This is just a heads up to let you know I'm coming for you. See, I decided that burning down your house is nothing.
Next time, I'm gonna get you where you really live.
Jesse, listen.
A tier. Season 5, Episode 13. Tohajili. Prepare your buttholes, ladies and gentlemen, because they are about to be protruded by some of the best episodes of television in recent memory. These next 4 episodes define everything that makes Breaking Bad so fantastic and iconic to this very day. Without these 4 episodes, I don't think the show would be nearly as popular as it is today. It's gonna get real dark though, so prepare yourself. Todd and Jack's gang attempt to recreate Walt's meth, with Lydia supervising to ensure its quality. Lydia asks why the meth isn't blue like Walt's, and Todd later apologizes to Lydia for the color, offering to make negotiations with the buyers. And he later gets a call from Walt, moments after Jesse made that threatening phone call.
Hey, it's Walt. Todd. I think I might have another job for your uncle.
Jesse gives his idea to Hank, which is to use Walt's own money against him. To start, they fake Jesse's death with a made-up crime scene. They later take Huel to a safe house, and use this photo of Jesse while interrogating him, saying that Walt killed him, and that he's currently in a safe house for his own protection. Huel eventually gives up some vital information for Hank and Gomez, and they leave, telling him not to take a step out the door until they come back. Walt visits Jack's gang, confirming their hit out on Jesse, and they do it under the condition that Walt teaches Todd to cook his formula. To get Jesse out of hiding, Walt tries to lure him out by having Andrea call his phone, but Hank intercepts this call, blocking Walt's assassination attempt. Gomez figures that this plan is a big fat game over, but Hank comes up with another plan.
I'll bet you 10 to 1 he buried that money.
No kidding. So what? There's a whole lot of desert out there. How are we gonna find the right spot? You said it yourself, there's no GPS on the van.
Yeah. Walt doesn't know that.
Saul goes to the car wash to meet with Walt, and runs into Walt Jr., who recognizes him from his ads.
You're on our billboard. You're the lawyer guy. Yeah.
Better call Saul. Thank you very much. Good to meet you.
Yeah.
Don't drink and drive, but if you do, call me.
Saul tells Walt that Huel's gone AWOL, and thinks that there might be a setup. However, Walt doesn't believe this, as he thinks that Jesse is too high to do anything elaborate. That is, until one of the best and most underrated scenes in the entire show plays out. Walt gets a text from Jesse, showing an open barrel of money out in the desert. Shocking Walt. Jesse calls Walt, telling him that he found 6 more barrels just like the one in the picture. Jesse tells Walt that he threatened Huel to give up information, and that Huel took him to the rental van, which had GPS, leading him to Walt's money. He threatens to burn Walt's money, and Walt pleads with him not to.
I said I'm coming! Don't you touch my money!
Fire in the hole, bitch. There goes 10 G's. Oh, nice orange flame.
No!
Walt tells him that his cancer is back, and that Jesse isn't hurting anyone but his kids. But Jesse calls him out for being a hypocrite. Walt apologizes for what he did to Brock, and says that everything he's done was to protect him and Jesse.
I ran over those gangbangers. I killed Emilio and Crazy 8Y. I did all of those things to try to save your life as much as mine. Only you're too stupid to know it.
A detail that I like about this whole scene is that Jesse refers to Walt simply as Walt, rather than Mr. White.
I'll give you a hint, Walt. It involves a couple of 5-gallon cans of gasoline and a lighter.
No, Jesse, please.
Calling him Mr. White was a sign of respect, showing that Jesse looked up to him. But at this point, Jesse has lost all respect for Walt, and this change in speech is a subtle way to indicate this. Jesse eventually stops talking to Walt, and Walt makes it to his money. However, Jesse is nowhere to be seen, and as Walt walks around with his gun in hand, he realizes that he was set up by Jesse. And as he sees what he presumes to be Jesse's car pulling up to the scene, he goes into hiding and calls Jack and his gang to take him out. However, he realizes that Hank and Gomez were teaming with Jesse this whole time, and he calls off the hit. We get a shot that parallels the very first shot of the entire show, as Walt eventually gives himself up to Hank, who arrests him on the spot.
Walter White, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to speak to an attorney and have an attorney present during any questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you at the government's expense. Do you understand these rights as I have just recited them to you?
Walt calls Jesse a coward, and Jesse spits in his face, and they fight for a brief moment before Walt is forced into the car. Hank calls Marie, celebrating his capture of Walt. Unfortunately for Hank, this celebration is a bit premature, as Jack and his gang decided that they didn't want to call off the hit. Walt screams to Hank to get away, and for Jack to put down his weapons, but this situation is out of Walt's control. In one of the best and most intense moments of the show, Hank, Gomez, and Jack's gang get into a huge shootout. Holy fucking shit. S tier. Season 5, Episode 14. Ozymandias. Double S tier. Come on, you already knew the moment I started this series. It isn't exactly the most unpopular opinion to have, but there's a very good reason why this episode is considered to be the finest episodes in television history. This episode reaches heights that some of the best shows don't even come close to reaching. While Crawlspace is my personal favorite, this is what I believe to be the best episode of Breaking Bad, and you'd better bet your ass I'm about to go balls deep into this episode. So let's get this thing started. We start off the episode with a flashback to the very first episode of the show, with Walt and Jesse in the middle of their very first cook. This was the very last scene that was shot for the entire show, presumably for Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul's hair to grow back, and it's pretty amazing to watch everything come full circle. Afterwards, Walt calls Skylar, and Walt tells his very first lie of the show, telling her that Bogdan forced him to work overtime at the car wash. They also decide on the name Holly for their future daughter, and Walt hangs up. We then get this amazing transition in the present day, revealing that the location of Walt's money in the shootout also took place in the same location of Walt's very first cook. After the shootout dies down, we see that Hank is badly wounded, and Gomez is dead. Hank tries to crawl towards Gomez's shotgun, but is stopped by Jack and his gang, who take it from him. They find out that Hank is a part of the DEA, and are about to shoot him when Walt screams out and pleads with him not to. Walt admits that Hank is his brother-in-law, but while Walt tries to convince Jack that the DEA has little involvement, Hank defiantly claims that the cavalry is coming. Walt tries everything to convince Jack not to kill Hank, including begging Hank to promise not to say anything, and bribing Jack with his money. But eventually, Hank tells Walt how hopeless the situation really is.
You're the smartest guy I ever met. And you're too stupid to see. He made up his mind 10 minutes ago. Do what you're gonna do.
Yeah, I know this scene has kind of been ruined because of the memes, but I think those memes go to show how iconic and devastating this shot really is. He went into cooking meth to save his family, but because of his own ego and intentions, he ended up destroying it irreparably. As Walt cries on the ground, Jack and his gang start digging up Walt's money, and they take every single barrel, putting them all into a truck, and they bury Hank and Gomez's bodies into the same hole Walt stored his money. They leave Walt with a barrel, and Jack lets Walt go. However, Walt's anger isn't about to let a certain person off the hook.
Pinkman, you still owe me.
If you can find him, we'll kill him.
Found him.
Jesse is eventually taken by Jack's gang, and they're originally about to kill him, as Jesse looks at two birds in the sky, symbolizing his presumed return with Jane. However, Todd suggests that they hold Jesse captive instead to cook the blue meth for them. As Jesse is dragged away, Walt stops him and makes a confession 3 seasons in the making.
I watched Jane die. I watched her overdose and choke to death. I could have saved her. But I didn't.
Jack and his gang take Jesse away, leaving Walt on his lonesome. Before I go any further, some of you might be asking what the name of this episode means. Ozymandias is the name of a poem written by Percy Shelley, and details the story of a pharaoh who once led a prosperous and mighty kingdom that eventually turned into a barren wasteland. Not even a shred of evidence indicates the location of a former kingdom. All that remains is a desert. This story perfectly reflects Walt's current situation. His money is taken, his operation has fallen completely apart, and his family has been forcibly taken away from him. It's all over. Also, another detail I want to mention is that the creators of this episode obtained special permission to display the credits after Jesse is taken away, around 20 minutes into the episode, as to not take away from any of the dramatic tension. It's an amazing touch. As Walt drives home with his money, the car shuts down, due to a hole that was shot through the gas tank. Walt decides to take the barrel out of the car and roll it back home in this amazing scene. If you look closely on the ground at one point, you can see Walt's lost khakis from the very first episode of the show pass by. Walt then runs into a house and uses the money in the barrel to purchase the truck off the owner. As Skyler calls Walt asking where he is, by the way, the person in the background is Maura Wally Beckett, the writer of this episode, Marie arrives at the car wash, asking Skyler to tell Junior about Walt's secret due to his supposed arrest. Meanwhile, Jesse is trapped in the prison, and Todd takes him to the meth lab, where Jesse learns that Andrea and Brock will be killed if he refuses to cook for them. Junior learns of his dad's secret, and has a meltdown, calling Marie and Skyler liars for going along. As Walt rushes back home, he packs up his and the rest of his family's belongings, and is ready to leave when Skyler Jr. and Holly return home. Walt desperately tries to get the family to come with him and change their identities, while Jr. keeps asking more and more questions. As Walt demands Jr. to pack his things, Skyler asks why Walt isn't in custody, and where Hank is right now.
You killed him. You killed Hank.
What?
No.
You killed
No! I tried to save him!
Skyler has reached her boiling point with Walt, and as Walt demands the family to pack up and leave, Skyler notices the knife sticking out from the kitchen, referencing one of the first shots of this episode, and the moment Walt thought to use a knife to kill Tuco.
Get out of here. Now.
Skyler.
Get out!
Stop it! Stop!
Junior tackles Walt to the ground, and Walt yells angrily at Skyler.
What the hell is wrong with you? We're a family!
As Junior calls 911, Walt takes one more desperate move to hold on to whatever aspect of his family he has left, by kidnapping Holly. Skyler desperately tries to get Holly back, but it's no use, as Walt backs out of the driveway, pushing the car out of the way. Skyler tries her best to run to Walt's car, but it's too late, and she collapses in the street. This entire scene is unbelievable. Watching this, you'd think Hank dying would be the climax of the episode, but it gets even worse than one could possibly imagine. The scene specifically with Walt and Skyler fighting is so good that I believe there's an actual science behind it. Let me explain. First off, this is one of the first times in the entire series that we see either of these characters raise their voices. Junior and Skyler usually remain pretty neutral, with Skyler having the occasional argument with Walt. However, this is one of the first times that we see either of them take this level of action, with Skyler slicing Walt's hands with a knife, and Junior physically pulling his father off Skyler. This level of new territory and unfamiliarity, combined with the situation we see these characters in, makes for this intense feeling that we as an audience can't shake. Second, in the background we can hear Holly crying, which adds even more intensity to the scene. Humans have an instinct known as fight or flight, a primal response in our brain that causes us to immediately react to a situation by either responding to the scene head-on or by fleeing the scene entirely. One of the most common causes of fight or flight is the sound of a baby crying, so by adding this sound to this already intense scene, it increases the sense of uneasiness as a viewer. Third, the cinematography. You got these shots of the camera zooming in on Walt and Skyler's fight, which adds a ton of energy to the scene. Also, the acting is astonishing. It all comes together to create such an incredible scene. Walt takes Holly to a gas station to clean her up, but Holly says something that breaks Walt's heart. Apparently this part was improvised by the baby playing Holly. You know you've got a good episode when the baby is at the top of her game. This scene might just be the hardest to watch out of the same episode with death and fights between family members, and it really goes to show the level of disconnect Walt has between him and his family. The police and Marie come to the house, sending out an Amber Alert for Holly, and Skyler gets a call from Walt, who gets wiretapped by the police. Walt berates Skyler, saying that he warned her that there'd be consequences if she crossed him. Skyler apologizes and asks what happened to Hank.
Where is Hank? Please, we need to know.
You're never gonna see Hank again.
Skyler begs Walt to come home, but Walt tells her that there's still things he has left to do. This might just be one of the best scenes in the entire show. And I know I've said that like 40 times, but this time I mean it. I gotta do a big ass deep dive for this one. First off, on the surface, it seems like Walt is berating Skyler as usual, but he's actually doing her a huge favor. Skyler committed a huge crime by helping Walt launder his money, but Walt's phone call essentially lets her off the hook, framing Skyler as the moral spouse that was forced to do Walt's dirty work.
Oh no, Walt, you have to stop. You have to stop this. It's immoral, it's illegal. You're always whining and complaining about how I make my money, just dragging me down while I do everything.
For a majority of the time, Walt is putting on a facade, and Skyler realizes this early on. However, while he still plays the part of the bad guy on the phone call, Walt's real feelings start to seep through, as he breaks down crying, telling Skyler the truth about Hank. Throughout the entire series, Walt cooked meth to make money for his family, and although the majority of Season 5 depicts him cooking meth for his ego and pride, a part of him still wanted to keep his family safe and secure, and it can be seen very well during this phone call. Also, there's another important thing I wanted to talk about here. There's this theory that Walt obtains a characteristic from every single person he kills, and I wanted to save this theory for this segment right here, because there are a few key moments where this theory is depicted. First off, the two guys Walt ran over in Season 3 used kids in their operation, and in Season 4, Walt uses Brock to get Jesse on his side. In the episode Blood Money, while Walt is puking in the toilet, he uses a towel underneath his knees, something Gus did in the episode where he killed the entire cartel. In this scene, when Walt is asked about Hank's whereabouts, Walt has this to say.
You're never gonna see Hank again.
This directly parallels something Mike told Walt when he asked him about where Gus is at the beginning of Season 4.
Where's Gus? Why? Because I would like to speak with him. What?
Walter, you're never gonna see him again.
Also, at the end of the phone call, Walt snaps his phone in half, something Gus does at Season 3 while listening to Juan Bolsa's death, and throughout Better Call Saul. There are probably a lot more examples of this throughout the show, so let me know if you've got any more examples of this. Anyways, Walt takes Holly to a fire department, where two guys are playing a game of chess, in which the White King only has a few moves to escape. Walter White? Kingpin? Oh! The next day, Walt meets with Ed the Disappearer, and is taken away in this fantastic closing shot. Oh my god. There is a very good reason why this episode is currently the only one with a 10 out of 10 rating on IMDb. I don't know how it's possible to make an episode this amazing. Literally every single scene is a 10 out of 10. There are moments so brilliant that it's hard to describe. No matter how many times I rewatch this episode, the feelings that I have are still the same as my first viewing. All of the awards and praise this episode received are well deserved. There will never be an episode quite as fantastic as Ozymandias. Season 5, Episode 15. Granite State. We see Ed the Disappearer taking Saul into the vacuum repair shop, prepared to change his identity and skip town. Ed tells Saul that he'll need to stay in the repair shop for a few days while he gets situated, and tells him that he'll be staying with a fun, goofball bunkmate.
How's he holding up?
You be the judge.
FBI agents look through Marie's house, which has been broken into by Jack's gang. They watch and mock Jesse's confession tape, and they find out that Todd killed Drew Sharp, which they pay very little attention to. Jesse begins his escape from the compound by using a paperclip to unlock his shackles, while Walt tries to plan a hit out on Jack and his gang, which Saul advises against. They talk about the feds going after Skyler, and how her and the rest of the family will be RICO'd out of the house. Saul tells Walt that the best thing to do is to stay in Albuquerque and confess his crimes, since he'll probably be dead soon anyways. But Walt is bloodthirsty for revenge, and he's dead set on killing Jack and his gang and getting the money to his family. Walt tries forcing Saul to come with him, but Saul tells him that he's not his lawyer anymore.
It's not over.
It's over.
Todd breaks into Skylar's house and tells her not to say anything about Lydia to the feds. Todd meets with Lydia and says that not only will Skylar not say anything, but that the purity of the meth has risen to 92%. I wonder how that happened. Walt is taken to New Hampshire by Ed and is placed inside a log cabin, forced to live only on canned goods, old-fashioned technology, and 2 copies of Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. Ed warns that Walt will be caught if he steps 1 foot out the door, so Walt listens to his every word and steps out the gate not even an hour later. However, he changes his mind, saving the escape for tomorrow. And speaking of escaping, Jesse manages to flee from the prison. Unfortunately, he's caught by Jack's gang on his way out, and he lashes out at them.
Just kill me now and get it over with, because there's no way I'm doing one more cook for you psycho fucks!
In response, they go to Andrea's house, and unfortunately, they follow up on their threat, all the while forcing Jesse to watch. After that fucking horrific scene, Walt meets with Ed again, who brings him more supplies and newspapers. Ed also tells him the news of Skylar, who is now using her maiden name. Before Ed leaves though, Walt begs him to stay, paying $10,000 to play cards with him for an hour. Reminds me of the scene where Jesse asked Walt to go go-karting with him, but Walt refused. Karma is a nasty bitch. That night, Walt's wedding ring falls off of his finger, symbolizing how dainty his fingers are. Oh, and his physical and emotional disconnect from his family, I guess. However, Walt tries his best to send his money to his family, sneaking his money into a box and sending it to Junior's friend's house. He calls Junior, attempting to inform him of the package, but Junior has a breakdown, telling his dad how much he hates him.
Why are you still alive? Why don't you just die already? Just die.
It's a depressing scene in an already incredibly depressing episode, and it really does feel like everything Walt worked toward was for nothing. In the end, he destroyed his family, his operation, his reputation, and his legacy. The only true accomplishments to his name are his contributions to the company Grey Matter, but even then, he sold his share too early, figuratively and literally, all because of his ego. In the end, Walt has no one to blame but himself for all the destruction that ruined his life irreparably. Devastated, Walt confesses his crimes to the DEA on the payphone, and collapses at the bar, ready to accept his defeat. However, as he watches the TV, he notices his former partners, Gretchen and Elliot, being interviewed. They say that Walt had very little involvement in the company, and that his only contribution to the company was the name. They also claim that Walter White is dead, and that his true personality has since vanished.
So my question is...
Season 5, Episode 16, Felina. In one of the coldest cold opens in the entire series, Walter gathers his supplies in the car to prepare for the long trip ahead of him, and for a brief moment, believes he's busted by the cops. However, the shining light passes him by, and he begins his ride on the road to redemption. He first stops by a gas station, obtaining the address of Gretchen and Elliot via payphone, and places his watch on the top before leaving. Later, Walter sneaks into Gretchen and Elliot's mansion, taking a look around at the wealth that he was never able to truly obtain. Gretchen notices Walter wandering around, and it takes her and Elliot a moment before they finally recognize him. Walter gives the pair all of his money, and demands them to give the money to his family. They shake on it, but on the off chance they decide to do something else with Walter's earnings, Walter has a failsafe just in case.
Don't move, don't dare move a muscle. You don't want them to think that you're trying to get away.
Walter says that he's hired 2 of the best hitmen west of the Mississippi to keep tabs on Gretchen and Elliot, in order to ensure that the money does reach his family. However, these 2 hitmen turn out to be some familiar faces.
You know, I don't exactly know how to feel about all this.
For real, yo?
How do you feel now?
Better.
Walter learns that Jesse is still alive, forced to cook meth, and another stop is added to his adventure of redemption. We get this flashback scene of Jesse creating a wooden box in his youth, referencing the story he told back in season 3. We return to the very first scene of the season, with Walter obtaining the gun and the ricin, and we get a flashback of Walter looking around the remains of his now abandoned house. Later, Walter crashes a meeting with Lydia and Todd, offering to teach a new method of cooking meth that requires no methylamine. Lydia denies doing business with him, as she puts a 40th packet of stevia in her coffee. Walter goes out in the middle of the desert, testing out a machine that makes his machine gun go beep beep boop boop. After this, Skyler, relocated with the rest of the family into a safe house, gets a call from Marie, who tells her that Walter is back in town. However, after the call, it's revealed that Walter was listening the whole time. Walter wants to give Skyler and the family one final goodbye, and gives Skyler the coordinates of the bodies of Hank and Gomez, telling her to use it to get a deal with the prosecutor of Skyler's case. Skyler breaks down crying, and Walter makes a stunning confession.
You need to understand.
I have to hear one more time that you did this for the family.
I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. I was alive.
It's the first time in the entire series that Walter has ever truly admitted his mistakes. While deep down, it was for the benefit of his family, it turned into an everlasting ego trip, one that Walter had so desperately longed for after a lifetime of mediocrity. In the end, the one person he truly made his money for was himself. Skyler feels almost relieved hearing this, after hearing nothing but lies from Walter for the past 2 years. Before Walter leaves, he gives a tearful goodbye to Holly for the last time, and watches as Junior walks to the house, satisfied. However, there's still one more matter that Walter has to take care of. Jesse. He drives to the compound, and parks his car right to the side of the clubhouse. Walter wants to make a deal, but they hold him at gunpoint, and Walter starts accusing them of violating the deal, since they partnered with Jesse instead of killing him. Jack says he wouldn't partner with a rat, and tells Todd to bring Jesse into the clubhouse. Once he's in, Walter tackles Jesse to the ground, and while the rest of the gang start to laugh, Walter presses a button on his car keys. In one of the most satisfying scenes in television history, the machine gun fires off, killing everybody in the wreckage. As Todd looks around the scene, Jesse chokes Todd with his handcuffs, killing him. Jack begs Walter not to kill him, promising to give up the location of the money, but Walter decides that he isn't interested.
You wanna know where it is? You pull that trigger, you never...
Walter and Jesse face off against one another, and Walter hands the gun over to Jesse, letting Jesse kill him once and for all.
Say you want this!
I want this.
However, Jesse notices that Walter is mortally injured from the shootout.
Then do it yourself.
As Jesse walks out of the clubhouse, Walter answers a call from Lydia on Todd's phone.
How are you feeling? Kind of under the weather? Like you've got the flu? That would be the ricin I gave you. I slipped it into that stevia crap that you're always putting in your tea. Oh, my God. Goodbye, Lydia.
As Walter hangs up the phone, Walter and Jesse give one final silent farewell as they part ways. Jesse escapes the compound in an El Camino, slamming through the gates and screaming in joy. As Walter begins to succumb to his injuries, he walks into the meth lab, taking a trip down memory lane. He looks onwards like it's his pride and joy, as the police sirens get louder and louder. Walter never had many accomplishments in his life, but there was always one thing that he knew he did well. He knew he could rest easy. All of his loose ends tied up, his ends justifying the means. He puts his hand on a large vat, and collapses as the injuries become too much to bear. He lays on the floor, a slight grin on his face, as we get this amazing and iconic shot of the camera slowly zooming out, showing us the entire meth lab, as multiple police officers investigate the scene. At the end of the day, despite being diagnosed with cancer, Walter White managed to go out on his own terms. It's one of the things he's wanted since the beginning, and he got it. That's it. That's the entire show. Only took a couple months, but hey, I did it. Season 5 really is one of the best runs in TV history. The story reaches some of the highest highs of any media ever conceived, and every single episode is a sight to behold. Never again will there be a show quite like Breaking Bad. I could say so much more, but to be honest, I think I've said all I've needed to. Thank you all so much for watching this series. I've spent a lot of time watching, editing, and writing, but I think it's all been worth it. Hey, I think I'm missing something. Oh yeah! Time for the bonus round! Here's every single episode of Breaking Bad ranked in order. I've been secretly giving every episode an alternate ranking, from 0 to 10. And now I'm gonna rank every single episode from bottom to top. Here is the official list! Breakage, 38 Snub, Gray Matter, I.F.T, Madrigal, Abiquiu, Hazard Pay, Down, No Moss, Greenlight, 737, Kafkaesque, Problem Dog, Cancer Man, Open House, Bug, and No Rough Stuff Tight Deal, Caballo Sin Nombre, Overcornered, Rabid Dog Pilot, 4 Days Out, Abiquiu, Bit by a Dead Bee, Bullet Points, Cats in the Bag, Moss, Shotgun, 51, Negro y Azul, ICU, Box Cutter, Hermanos, Confessions, Buyout, Buried, Live for Your Die, Blood Money, Sunset, Half Measures, End Times, and the Bags in the River, Gliding Overall, Granite State, Peekaboo, Dead Freight, Grilled, Salud, Fly, Say My Name, Phoenix, Crazy Handful of Nothing, Tohajali, Full Measure, 1 Minute, Mandala, Better Call Saul, Felina, Face Off, Ozymandias, and Crawl Space. Alright, now we're good. There's nothing else for me to review in the Breaking Bad universe. Oh yeah. El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. Created 6 years after Breaking Bad went off the air, El Camino, written and directed by Vince Gilligan, takes place immediately where the show left off, with Jesse escaping the compound. Except I just lied to you, the movie actually begins with a flashback, something you'll be seeing a lot of going forward. This flashback takes place during Season 5, right before Mike and Jesse quit doing business with Walt. Jesse decides that he should skip town, and he asks Mike where he would go if he were in his position.
Alaska. Up there, you could be anything you want.
Alright, now we're here. As Jesse escapes out of the compound in the titular El Camino, he nearly gets busted by the cops, but manages to flee the scene without getting caught. He drives to Skinny Pete and Badger's house, who are busy apexing and insulting each other.
You drive like a blind guy with no legs.
Dude, you drive like my dead grandmom's.
That's disrespectful.
They initially don't recognize him at first, but they realize that it's Jesse, and they help him get the El Camino off the street so it isn't identified by the cops. I love how even with years worth of trauma under his belt, Jesse still has the incredible talent of not being able to drive without knocking shit over. As Jesse chugs down ramen and goes to bed, it's revealed that all of the former Breaking Bad locations have been turned back into their real-life counterparts. The fact that the sign says under new management is a great touch. Also, I just want to say that I love how this movie looks. It's probably because I'm watching it in 4K, but I love how cinematic this movie is, while still keeping the overall feel of Breaking Bad. Badger and Skinny Pete help Jesse get cleaned up, giving him some clothes and letting them use their shower. He has a painful flashback of Jack's gang cleaning him off with a fire hose, and he decides to shave off his hair and beard, at the cost of making him more recognizable by law enforcement, but helping him to forget the pain he had to endure.
Feel like a new man?
Yeah, thanks.
Jesse begins his escape from Albuquerque, first calling Joe, the junkyard owner, to get rid of the El Camino. However, as he inspects the car, a GPS inside of it activates, and Joe flees the scene before he gets caught. The trio realizes that Jesse might be screwed if they don't act fast, so they devise a plan. Skinny Pete has Jesse keep the El Camino at the house, and has Jesse drive his car while Badger drives another car to the border, diverting the cops' attention away from Jesse and making it look like he hopped the border. Badger gives Jesse some money and drives off, giving Jesse one final farewell, and Skinny Pete does the same, giving Jesse his hat to help him stay undercover.
Yo, Skinny, why are you doing all this? Dude, you're my hero and shit.
As Jesse drives off, he watches as a ginormous fucking army of police cars head to the house, with Skinny Pete prepared to be taken in for questioning. We get a flashback of Jesse's enslavement by Jack's gang, where Todd hands over Jesse a cigarette like he's getting a teddy bear in a claw machine. Todd casually talks to Jesse about the weather, and tells Jesse that the rest of the gang is out for the weekend, and asks for his help with a project. Todd puts his sociopathic tendencies out on full display in this scene, as he talks to Jesse as if he isn't using him as a meth slave, and didn't kill his former girlfriend right in front of him just a few days ago. He also demeans him and treats him like he's some sort of pet or young child, cleaning his hair with a comb and promising to keep him clean next time. I'd get angry at Todd, but then I remember that he gets killed by Jesse shortly after this, so I'm good. They drive to a building that's located on the corner of Holly and A Rose, which shockingly enough, is not a real place. There is a street called Holly Avenue, but A Rose Road doesn't exist. That's because this street is actually a reference to Vince Gilligan's wife, Holly Rice. No relation. A Rose in Spanish translates to rice, so this street is in tribute to her. Shout out Holly Rice. Anyways, Todd and Jesse arrive to pick up a hood for the back of the car, and Todd tells them there's one more part of the trip that they need to cover. Before we find out that other part though, we're taken back to the present, where Jesse is listening in on the news, revealing that Lydia has been hospitalized and is not expected to survive, and that Walter White has been officially declared dead. Jesse drives back to the same street corner that Todd took him to months prior, and heads into the building, breaking into a closed-off apartment and narrowly being caught by the landlord. As Jesse looks through the peephole, we're taken back to the flashback, with Todd and Jesse entering the not yet abandoned apartment, which is revealed to be Todd's. Jesse asks if they're here to paint, and Todd says, yeah, but first, let's dispose the body of the cleaning lady that I fucking brutally murdered. Apparently he did this because she took one look at his secret money stash.
So your cleaning lady was stealing your money?
What? No. She was as honest as the day is long, but she found it, and I can't have anybody finding it.
Then, like, don't put your money book out in the open. Better yet, don't even put your money there. Put your money in your closet or under your mattress, you dope.
Where are you gonna take her?
Someplace pretty. She deserves that.
You know what else she deserved? Not getting killed! Oh, whatever, she's dead anyways. Todd asks Jesse to put the book away, and Jesse notices that Todd kept the spider that Drew Sharp found back in season 5, demonstrating Todd's complete lack of emotion or empathy, if it hasn't been made abundantly clear already. Back in the present, Jesse looks in those same books for any cash left behind by Todd, but unfortunately, Jesse comes up empty-handed. He starts combing around every nook and cranny in Todd's apartment, trying to find the place that Todd hid his money. At one point, however, he notices that his parents are giving an interview on the news, and he briefly stops his search to take a listen.
Is there anything you wish you could say to your son right now?
Please, come forward. For your sake, for everybody's sake. Son, turn yourself in.
We're taken back to the past, with the cleaning lady's body gently being taken out of the building, and we get this really fucking funny scene of Todd singing in his car.
I'd like to know if you're as lonely as I am, and if you're mine.
They make it out to the desert, and as they finish burying the body, Todd asks Jesse to grab another pack of cigarettes in the glove box. When Jesse opens it, however, he finds a loaded gun placed right next to it, and has the opportunity of a lifetime to finally murder Todd once and for all. However, Todd gives Jesse an enticing offer.
On the way home, I was gonna get us some pizza. A couple large pies. Because you earned it today. You definitely did.
I'm making dinner.
I wish. No, Jesse can't bring himself to kill Todd, so he decides that eating some pizza is the best course of action. In the present, Jesse is still looking around to find Todd's money, but with no luck. This shot right here has got to be one of my favorites in the entire movie. This top-down angle makes it look like we're viewing one of those mazes with a rat trying to find a piece of cheese. They had to build this big panel just to get this angle, and considering how good it looks, I'd say it was definitely worth it. Jesse eventually figures out that the money was stored inside of the refrigerator door, but as he tries ripping it open, he notices 2 police officers walk into the apartment, who start searching the place. Jesse holds one of the officers at gunpoint, and holds him hostage as he threatens the other cop, who says that Jesse shouldn't shoot, since the building is surrounded by cops. As they force Jesse to the ground, however, it's revealed that these 2 men weren't actually cops in the first place. It turns out that these 2 men had the same idea as Jesse, and before they kill him, Jesse tells them that he knows where the money is. They end up splitting the money 3 ways, and Jesse recognizes one of the guys from the compound.
I was wondering when you were gonna remember me.
After a bit of searching, Jesse heads to Ed's vacuum repair shop. He offers him the $125,000, but Ed tells Jesse that he still owes him for the pickup he ditched back in season 5. Jesse gives in, and offers him the rest of his funds, but unfortunately, comes up $1,800 shy. Ed kicks Jesse out of the store, and Jesse tries to appeal to Ed's emotions, talking about how he was trapped by Jack's gang and how he had to watch Andrea get shot. But Ed denies this appeal to pathos and calls the police on Jesse. After Ed hangs up the call, Jesse calls out Ed, saying that his phone call was full of crap. He points out the fact that drawing attention to himself is a big mistake, considering the fact that Jesse was just trying to hand over a huge bag of cash, and that the police won't let you hang up a 911 call.
Seriously, yo. Pathetic.
Wow, you love that response time. Take your money.
The two eventually reach a deal outside of the store, and later, Jesse calls his parents, telling them that everything that happened to him was not their fault. Jesse also asks them to pick him up at a nearby park, and uses his parents' now diverted attention as an opportunity to break into their house. Inside, he cracks open a safe, obtaining 2 revolvers, and he heads over to the company building belonging to that one guy who almost killed Jesse earlier. The reason why Jesse recognized this guy is because he was the man who built the contraption that forced Jesse to cook meth for so long. Anyways, the people at this company are throwing a big party with a busload of strippers, and after playing hopscotch with a bug that mirrors a scene from all the way back in season 2, Jesse crashes the party, asking the gentleman for more money. The man, Neil, notices that Jesse is carrying a .22 on him, and offers a challenge to Jesse.
You're 22 against my 45. Winner takes all.
Like the Wild West?
Yeah. Like the Wild West.
Neil and Jesse face off against one another, hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line. The other man, Casey, desperately tries to fight against Jesse. Jesse threatens the other men that he will hunt them down if they report this shooting to the cops, and Jesse walks out with a duffel bag full of cash. Wow, Jesse, I can't believe that worked! That plan really was the bomb! In one of the final flashbacks of the movie, we see Jesse bathing in a hotel room, talking to Jane on the phone saying how much he misses her, and he walks out of the room with some random dude. Oh shit. They sit down at a restaurant, and Walt asks how long it will take to sell the full batch of meth, to which Jesse says around 6 months. It's implied that this scene takes place right after the two got the RV up and running during 4 Days Out, where the two cooked a shitload of meth. Walt suggested Jesse that he should get a degree in business and marketing, claiming that he could practically teach that subject already, and laments how Jesse didn't have to wait his entire life to do something special.
Only an asshole doesn't like pineapple. Pineapple's good for you. It's got bromine.
Bromelain, but close. Actually, it's not close at all.
It's interesting watching Walt talk to Jesse as if he could do something special, and in a way that could be diverting him from the business. This is around the point of the show where Walt still physically and verbally showed his care for Jesse, and didn't have as much of an inflated ego like in the later seasons. What is inflated, however, is Walt's head. I know Bryan Cranston was busy with something else at the time, but god damn, that makeup does not age well. Back in the present, Ed takes Jesse to his new home, new identity and all.
This is Alaska.
This is Alaska.
Before he leaves for good, Jesse gives Ed a letter to give to Brock, and we get one more flashback before the movie ends. We see Jesse and Jane talking to one another, and Jane tells Jesse about how she views the universe.
I've gone where the universe takes me my whole life. It's better to make those decisions for yourself.
The movie ends with Jesse driving in his car, calm and collected, contrasting his attitude in the opening shots of the film. With his loose ends tied up, Jesse can finally live a life of freedom, solitude, and for the first time in a while, peace. Admittedly, the first time I saw this movie, I thought it was kind of pointless. Like, I didn't think it was a bad movie, but I felt like the world of Breaking Bad would be more or less the same without it. On rewatch, however, I've grown a much stronger appreciation for this movie. Not only does it close out Jesse's arc and finally give him the happy ending he deserved, but the movie itself just looks amazing. There are so many beautiful shots in this film that are grossly underrated. If you're going to watch this movie, do yourself a huge favor and watch it in 4K. It is required viewing. I think the slow burn in the movie worked in its favor, and I love seeing Breaking Bad alumni return for some cameos in the movie. Admittedly, though, you could probably remove a few of these cameos entirely, but luckily they don't subtract from the film, so they're still cool. Overall, this was a solid movie, but how would I rate it? Well, I used to consider this film as a sort of epilogue for Breaking Bad, but I think it deserves to stand alone as its own thing. For this film, I'm feeling a solid A tier. There are some slow moments here and there, but I think this movie deserves its rightful spot in the Breaking Bad canon. And speaking of the Breaking Bad canon, I'll see you all next time. Take care.